Chapter 2341. It's a pity that Wuxin Iron Constable didn't follow us, Xiaoya said regretfully. She had a good impression of this woman. Suyu said, "Don't worry, she'll be fine." Others might not know, but Suyu knew the true strength of Wuxin Iron Constable. The black tortoise on her had caused the divine nine-dragon Cauldron to vibrate. With that, she wouldn't have to fear anyone in the human realm. Moreover, Wuxin Iron Constable's many years of hunting criminals meant that she would be fine. Suyu believed that she had discovered something and given up on meeting them halfway, acting alone. Moreover, rather than worrying about her, Suyu felt that he should be more worried about Biyun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat. They didn't come either. Golden-eyed Langjun. Was this also part of your plan? Suyu thought to himself. The group waited for a few more days, but Wuxin Iron Constable, Biyun Hongxian, and the others didn't come. I told you that woman can't be trusted. Xiaoya was getting impatient. Suyu had been chased by the wild wolf and wasted so much time, but he still managed to make it here. If Biyun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat really wanted to meet up with them, they would have arrived long ago. They would either have died in an accident or gone on their own. Forget it, let's go. Suyu gave up waiting. There were 6 of them. Suyu, Xiaoya, Xianhua, Xianin, Kong Chu, and Princess Qianyu. Xianhua said, "The sword-seeking pavilion arrived half a day earlier than us and didn't encounter that wild wolf. They should have occupied the ancient glaze platform long ago. We will inevitably have to fight for it." Everyone's hearts sank. They had lost many people, so they would be at a disadvantage if they fought the sword-seeking pavilion. Everyone was mentally prepared. Unexpectedly, when they arrived, there was no one on the ancient glaze platform. What they saw was a huge bronze platform with a circumference of 10,000 feet. There were many ancient runes and words carved on it. Many mysterious paths crisscrossed, as if there were 3,000 great paths and billions of small paths. It was profound and indescribable. At first glance, it made people face the way of heaven, unable to extricate themselves. So he was also trapped. He felt his surroundings darken, and his whole body was about to fall into it. Right at this moment, he returned to his senses in time, and he suddenly shouted with the voice of a dragon. Everyone present instantly became vigilant, and they were greatly astonished. They had only taken a glance at it, and they had almost fallen into it. Looking at the skeletons around them that had been dead for who knew how many years, everyone understood that they might not have died from killing each other. It was very likely that their souls had been trapped here and had been worn away by time. Don't look at the symbols, tracks, and words on it. They were left behind by the almighty beings of the previous era. Suyu shouted. He was proficient in the languages of the 10,000 races, but he didn't know a single word on it. What was even stranger was that he had seen a similar platform in the human demon's memory. In the last great era, this object wasn't some ancient glaze platform, but rather called the Evil Crossing Lotus Seat. Its purpose was to resist the destruction of an era. The Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne was created by the combined efforts of 30,000 great beings in the world. It was the culmination of their entire life's efforts and the exhaustion of the foundation of billions of civilizations. It was an artifact that allowed them to overcome misfortune in a hopeless situation. Due to its resemblance to a magical artifact, it was also known as the Lotus Throne of Nightmares. Suyu's heart thumped wildly. In the memories of the human demon, even the human ancestor had appeared to guide the construction of the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne. More than half of that era's matchless powerhouses participated, working together to create a magic treasure that could survive the destruction of that era. This object could be said to be the #1 magic treasure of the previous era. However, judging from the fall of the human ancestor and the disappearance of the matchless powerhouses, they had failed. The Nightmare Crossing Lotus Seat had failed to resist the destruction of the era. Everything had been destroyed. The ancient Emperor Master, the mighty kings of heaven and earth, and the 10 sacred ancestors had all been annihilated in the dust of history. Only the remnants of the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Seat remained, recounting the glory of the past. A wave of desolation and desolation swept across his heart. It was as if he could see countless ancestors crying out in despair, struggling in the face of destruction, fighting against the fate of the ancient reincarnation, letting out roars of unwillingness that shook the firmament universe. However, the sacred mountain was merciless, and they could not escape the fate of destruction. They were like moths flying into a flame. Emperor of the sacred mountain, your immortality is the eternal hatred of countless holy spirits. Su Yu's emotions surged, and he was overwhelmed with emotions. If one day he could set foot on the sacred mountain, he would definitely slaughter all the emperors and open the way for the world. As if the oath in Su Yu's heart had triggered something, the giant ancient bronze platform began to creak with difficulty. Shreds of shocking, unique aura leaked out from it. Su Yu did not feel anything, but Xian Hua and the others were wild with joy. This is the mysterious aura that can enhance the cultivation of the Path Masters. Xie Xiaoya was the closest, and she was the first to feel it. Xian Hua was second only to her, and she could not help but be overjoyed. How can there be so much? According to the records, only a shred of it is released every 10 days. There are more than 1,000 shreds of this mysterious aura. Such a large amount of mysterious aura was probably more than the legendary word heaven. They did not have the time to think about why this was happening, and they all leaped up to absorb the mysterious aura. Su Yu and Princess Qianyu were both half-step path masters, so they could not absorb the mysterious aura. Su Yu was fine, but Princess Qianyu was envious, but there was nothing she could do. Because her 9 divine body could not achieve the upper class for a long time, she could not break through to the Pathmaster level. Thinking of this, she could not help but look at Su Yu, and an inexplicable resentment rose in her heart. If Su Yu had continued to train her 9 divine body, she might have become a Pathmaster by now. On the one hand, she did not admit that Su Yu had trained her 9 divine body, and she claimed that it was all because of her. On the other hand, when she was not good enough, she blamed Su Yu for not doing his best. Su Yu had always kept a respectful distance from such a self-centered woman. Hey, my father said there's a place in the word earth that might be helpful for my 9 divine body, Princess Qianyu said as she bit her lip. Oh, Su Yu said calmly, without looking at her. Princess Qianyu waited for a while, and when she found that Su Yu had nothing else to say, she said, My father said you must take me there. Her tone was like it was the right thing for Su Yu to do. Really? He didn't tell me, Su Yu said calmly. He did not know where Princess Qianyu got the news that there was such a place in the word earth. But he was sure that it was not the monarch who said it. If the monarch knew there was such a place, he would have looked for Su Yu and asked him to protect Princess Qianyu. There was no reason for him to let his daughter tell him at the last moment. Moreover, his tone was so stiff. My father said it. Princess Qianyu repeated. Su Yu said indifferently. Then let him tell me. You. Princess Qianyu was annoyed. After staring at Su Yu for a long while, Princess Qianyu stomped her feet and snorted, I will go by myself. Su Yu turned a deaf ear to her words. He did not care about her life or death. Princess Qianyu left angrily. Su Yu, when I become the Pathmaster, you will be the first one I will step on. As she spoke, she left alone and looked around until she came to a remote corner. Whoosh! The giant leaves in front of her suddenly parted, and Biyun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat walked out. The man in the bamboo hat stepped forward and said, So you did not come? He refused to come, Princess Qianyu said with a gloomy face. The man in the bamboo hat sighed, sounding extremely disappointed. Forget it. There will be a chance sooner or later. Let's go and get there as soon as possible, the man in the bamboo hat said. It turned out that when Princess Qianyu was on her way to the ancient glaze platform, she met the man in the bamboo hat and Biyun Hongxian. They told Princess Qianyu that there was a mysterious spiritual spring in the word earth, which could help all kinds of constitutions that could not be broken through to the Pathmaster level. They were about to head there. Princess Qianyu was immediately tempted, and she took the initiative to ask them to bring her along. The man in the bamboo hat agreed readily, saying that he hoped that Princess Qian you could invite Su Yu over due to the danger of the word Earth. In the end, not only did they fail to invite Su Yu, but they were also rejected by him. That's right, we gave him a chance, and he did not want it. So don't blame us. Princess Qian Yu snorted. She did not notice that Biyunhong Xian, although normal on the outside, had not said a word. She also did not notice that in the boundless sky, a giant I was slowly disappearing. I told you that her information came from another source, Su Yu said. He knew that something was amiss, so he paid more attention to it. He did not expect the man in the bamboo hat to bewitch Princess Qian Yu. Su Yu's eyes turned slightly, and he secretly chased after him. He was not worried about Princess Qian Yu's safety, but he wanted to see who the man in the bamboo hat was and what he wanted. This man was hostile to him, and he had tricked Princess Qian Yu, and it seemed like he had done something to Biyunhong Xian. Moreover, he was the golden-eyed Longyuan's man, so Su Yu had to be careful. Moreover, Xian Hua and the other three had already entered a state of cultivation, so Su Yu could have left without any trouble. In a few breaths, the man in the bamboo hat was far away. They were using the extremely fast, heavenly legacy warship. Su Yu chased for a while, but he was about to lose him and was about to use the space realm. Creak! Suddenly, the sound of space tearing came from behind Su Yu. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat, and he threw a punch behind him without hesitation. However, his fist was held by a warm, delicate, and soft hand. At the same time, a familiar voice whispered, "It's me." Turning his head, he saw that it was the missing Wuxin Iron Constable. She was riding the gold and silver horse, traveling through space. At this moment, she was bending down to receive Su Yu's punch, lest it hurt the gold and silver horse. "Are you also following the man in the bamboo hat and Biyunhong Xian?" Su Yu immediately realized why the Wuxin Iron Constable had disappeared. The Wuxin Iron Constable retracted her hand and said, "Aren't you the same? Get on the horse." Su Yu did not refuse. Once he used the space realm, it would cause a huge commotion. He believed that the Wuxin Iron Constable must have noticed this, so she showed up in time to stop Su Yu from using the space realm. Su Yu leaped onto the gold and silver horse and sat behind the Wuxin Iron Constable. "Hold on tight." She released the reins, and two beams of light shot out from the eyes of the gold and silver horse, opening a crack in the space. Su Yu was immediately hit by a strong spatial impact, and his body became unstable. He was about to fall. Chapter 2342. The heartless Iron Constable, who was riding the gold and silver horse, stiffened. But thinking that the person behind him was Su Yu, she felt at ease. She rode the gold and silver horse into the space and chased after him secretly. A few days later, the man in the bamboo hat came to the end of the human realm, a huge waterfall that went against the sky. Ordinary waterfalls flowed from top to bottom, but this one went against the sky. The end of the waterfall reached the depths of the sky, and a huge gap could be vaguely seen. That was the Earth realm. The lowest level of beasts was the fish dragon realm, which was the level of that wild wolf. It would be difficult to encounter any of them, but the man in the bamboo hat seemed to be extremely confident and fearless. He leaped along the waterfall toward the gap in the sky. After a few leaps, he successfully entered. Swoosh! The heartless Iron Constable broke through the space and appeared in front of the waterfall. "We have to follow him," the heartless Iron Constable said calmly. But just as the gold and silver horse was about to step onto the waterfall, a huge carp jumped out from it. It came down from the gap in the sky and swam back and forth in the waterfall, crashing into the waterfall. With a casual sweep of its tail, it cut off the waterfall. A carp of the fish dragon realm. The heartless Iron Constable pulled the reins and frowned. A beast of such a level would only appear in the Earth realm. Why would it come to this waterfall? And this carp had been in the waterfall all this time. Why did it not attack when the man in the bamboo hat entered, but it appeared to stop them when they were about to enter? This is troublesome. The man in the bamboo hat should have the ability to control beasts. Su Yu's brows slightly shrank. He thought of a person, the beast slave king of the mist forest. He was an expert in controlling beasts. However, he usually controlled them through talismans. The carp in front of him did not do so. It It was more willing to obey orders. If there was no other way, he could only use the 9-5 Heaven's frost needle to injure it and see if it would escape. Roar. However, at this moment, Suyu heard a familiar roar behind him. Suyu's expression changed slightly. What a haunting ghost! That roar belonged to none other than the wild wolf in the fish dragon realm. Suyu thought it had given up on chasing him, but it was still following him secretly. In the past, Suyu did not understand why it was so obsessed with him, but now he understood. It was a secret order from the man in bamboo hat. Otherwise, with Suyu's size, he would be like a flea to a wild wolf. Was there a need to chase after him relentlessly? The only reason was that it had made Suyu its target. That man in the bamboo hat really does have a deep grudge against me. Previously, Suyu had caught a glimpse of hatred in his opponent's eyes. Now, it seemed like there was more than just friction between them. Instead, it was a blood feud. What a good-plated bamboo hat man. In that case, there is no need for me to feign civility anymore. Suyu's eyes glowed with a cold light. The heartless iron hunter looked at the persistent wolf behind him and understood that it was not an ordinary person. He sighed and said, "The people around golden-eyed Langjun are indeed not ordinary people." She had spent quite some time with Xie Xiaoye, and she had asked the golden-eyed playboy for relevant information. She completely understood what had happened in the Heavenly Legacy Cave abode. Suyu was deeply convinced. First, there was the mysterious Star Lady, and now there was the mysterious man in bamboo hat, who could control wild beasts. In front of him was a carp blocking his way, and behind him was a wild wolf chasing after him. Suyu wanted to use the 9-5 Heaven's cold needle to kill one of them first. The heartless iron constable hesitated for a moment before saying, "Step back." Ugh! Suyu's eyes flashed. He remembered the black tortoise in the heartless iron hunter's hands. As expected, the heartless iron hunter clenched her fist, and a golden black tortoise appeared in her palm. As soon as it appeared, it emitted the aura of the king of beasts. The wild wolf, which was about to pounce, was extinguished as if it had been doused with cold water. Like a bullied wild dog, it tucked its tail between its legs and let out a grunt. Then it turned and burrowed into the tall forest, escaping. As for the carp, it was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. It hurriedly waved its huge tail and fled along the waterfall back to the ground. In the blink of an eye, the two fish dragon realm wild beasts fled in fright. What was noteworthy was that the two wild beasts did not have spiritual intelligence. They acted purely on instinct. Even so, they were still scared out of their wits. It was obvious that the black tortoise was extraordinary. It's not your first time seeing it. What's so interesting about it? The heartless iron hunter said indifferently as she put it away. Suyu chuckled. Back then, she had been able to defeat the heartless iron hunter because she had prevented the heartless iron hunter from activating the black tortoise. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to determine the victor. Giddy up. The heartless iron hunter rode the gold and silver horse unimpeded through the waterfall and into the gap. As soon as they entered, a whiff of the unique aura of the nightmare crossing lotus throne hit them in the face. The nightmare crossing lotus throne of the human realm had basically fallen into a state of stagnation. It would only occasionally emit a very weak aura. However, the nightmare crossing lotus throne here was different. It could actually maintain a certain amount of unique aura. It was obvious that it had not been completely destroyed. Suyu, do you know why the wild beasts here can maintain such a huge form and survive for so many years? The heartless iron hunter suddenly asked. Suyu had been curious about this before, but now he basically understood. It was the nightmare crossing lotus throne that could maintain such a unique ecosystem for so long. It was precisely because of the unique aura emitted at that time that the plants and animals grew to such an enormous size. That was why such a spectacle was created. Perhaps it's because of the so-called ancient glaze platform. Suyu pretended not to know. Yes, the heartless iron hunter said. It is indeed the ancient glaze platform. But do you know that it has another use? Huh? Suyu said calmly. What are you trying to say? I'm trying to say that the golden-eyed Longjuan's goal is most likely the ancient glaze platform. the heartless iron hunter said. According to my understanding, there are a large number of great paths within the ancient glaze platform. If used as a weapon, it would be enough to destroy heaven and earth, enough to threaten the entire West regions. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. If he had not coincidentally obtained information about the nightmare-crossing Lotus Throne, he might not have understood the heartless iron hunter's meaning. Since I happen to come across this matter, of course I can't just stand by and watch. The heartless iron hunter was the same as always. She hated evil and would never tolerate evil. As she spoke, her crystal-like eyes turned to look at Su Yu. Are you willing to help me? Su Yu said without hesitation. As I said before, if you need any help, just let me know. The heartless iron hunter looked pleased. I won't ask for your help for free. Regardless of whether it succeeds or not, I will tell you about the great divine throne of heaven and earth. If it had been something else, so you might not have cared. But the great divine throne of heaven and earth was the key to Su Yu becoming a path master. Has it reappeared? Su Yu's eyes flashed. The heartless iron hunter nodded affirmatively. Yes, after lying dormant for more than 10 years, it has reappeared. Su Yu understood that all these years, the great divine throne of heaven and earth had been recovering from the injuries he had inflicted upon it. Now that it had reappeared, it must have gone to find Zhang Wushuang. It appeared just in time. If he could become a path master before entering the 8-star civilization, he would have more confidence in the trip to the sinful Lady Palace. Chapter 2343. He could only hope that the heavenly god throne would not be taken by someone else. Even without the heavenly throne of heaven and earth, I will fulfill my promise. Su Yu said slowly. He had once promised the heartless iron hunter that he would help him deal with the golden-eyed playboy, so he would naturally not go back on his word. However, Su Yu looked at her deeply for a while. It could be said that she was well-informed. Su Yu hadn't heard any news about the divine throne of heaven and earth in the Nightless Empire, but the reclusive heartless iron arrester knew a lot about it. Apart from that, she had also vaguely grasped the truth behind the glazed ancient platform. Su Yu was very curious as to where the information of the heartless iron hunters came from. It was impossible for a person who lived in seclusion to obtain so much important information for no reason. However, he didn't expose her and said, "Do you have a specific plan?" "No, if you have, you can tell me." The heartless iron constable said with a deeper meaning. At present, it was not clear what the man in bamboo hat was going to do, so Iron Arrester could not make a plan. I don't have enough information, so I can't even talk about a detailed plan. Su Yu's eyes flickered. However, I do have a plan that isn't really a plan. The corners of the heartless iron constable's mouth curled up into a faint smile, as if saying, I knew you would have a way. Since you guessed that his objective was the glazed ancient stage, why should we chase after him blindly? Su Yu asked calmly. The heartless iron arrester pondered. You mean to go to the human ancient glaze platform and wait there? She had also thought of this method, but it couldn't be considered a plan. She was a little disappointed. It seemed like Su Yu wasn't always good at setting things up. No, unexpectedly. Su Yu shook his head lightly. What I mean is, why don't we snatch the glazed ancient platform first? Do you want to move the tree and wait for the hare? The heartless iron constable's eyelashes fluttered, and he tilted his head slightly to look at Su Yu. He was a little confused by Su Yu's bold and imaginative words. The golden-eyed Longjuan scheme lies in the glazed ancient stage, so we can just take drastic measures. Su Yu was like a spectator who was not involved in the matter, and he revealed the essence of the matter. The heartless iron arrester finally understood Su Yu's meaning and said, Your thoughts are really hard to fathom. She had been hunting down criminals for a long time, so she was experienced and quick-witted. However, in front of Su Yu, he felt that his brain wasn't enough. As he stared at Su Yu, the heartless iron arrester felt a sense of suffocation. He couldn't help but rejoice inwardly. Fortunately, Su Yu was an upright person and wasn't an evil person. Otherwise, she would have a headache if he became her enemy. Let's go. With the ability of the gold and silver horses, it won't be a problem to surpass them. The heartless iron constable nodded and rode the gold and silver horse. Although they encountered many fish dragon realm beasts along the way, the heartless iron catcher had the golden tortoise in his hand, so they were safe and sound. 10 days later, they overtook the man in bamboo hat and arrived at the end of the heavy man. As expected, the bad riddle lotus throne that was still in operation came into view. There were many wounds on his body, and many of the mysterious trajectories had disappeared without a trace. However, it was still spinning on its own, releasing a weak, unique aura. What surprised Suyu was that there were a few figures sitting cross-legged on the nightmare-crossing lotus seat. Hunting shadow, ghost eye? Suyu felt relieved. It was no wonder that he did not see anyone from the Sword Seek Pavilion after entering this place. It turned out that they had abandoned the heavy man and come to the heavy man, which was the heavy man compared to the initial number of people. The people from the Sword Seek Pavilion had suffered some losses. From an initial 7 or 8 people, there were only 4 left. If they knew that the special aura they had obtained after paying such a huge price was not even as much as the heavy man, which had been reactivated, how would they feel? What if there are people? The Heartless Iron Constable asked. Chase them all away? Suyu shook his head slightly. That would alert them too much. After thinking for a while, Suyu said, Can you lend me the golden tortoise? The Heartless Iron Constable hesitated. She had always been straightforward, but after thinking it over, she said decisively, All right. However, you must not leave my sight. Suyu felt an indescribable sense of relief. Suyu knew what kind of treasure the golden tortoise was. It must be the most important item of the Heartless Iron Constable. However, she was still willing to lend it to Suyu. It was evident how much she trusted Suyu. A warm current slowly flowed through his heart. The Heartless Iron Constable's heartfelt trust and tacit understanding reminded Suyu of the time when he had first met Xia Jingyu. There was a type of friend in the world that could be called a beauty. The Heartless Iron Constable was one of them. However, Suyu really only saw her as a friend. He had no other thoughts. There were already 2 unbearable feelings in his life, and he could not bear any more. Here you go. The Heartless Iron Constable took the golden tortoise and said, This thing is very heavy. Be careful. Really? Suyu did not dare to be careless. His right hand turned into a dragon claw and grasped the golden tortoise. Unexpectedly, it was not as heavy as he had imagined. Instead, it was light. Moreover, the expected cold metallic feeling did not appear. Instead, it was a little warm, as if the golden tortoise was transmitting a faint heat. Suyu's arm returned to human form. He shook it in his hand and was slightly surprised. Fortunately, it is not very heavy. The Heartless Iron Constable, who was beside him, had a look of surprise on her face. She said, This thing weighs 1,080,000,000 pounds, which is equivalent to an entire 4-star civilization. Only those who have recognized it by blood can carry it easily. Suyu also found it strange and tried to put it on the ground. As soon as the golden tortoise's feet touched the ground caved in deeply. Suyu immediately lifted it up. Just as he was feeling puzzled, the divine 9-dragon Cauldron in his arms moved restlessly. The 9 flying dragons in his arms let out a dragon roar that only Suyu could hear. It seemed very excited. The divine 9-dragon Cauldron had reacted again. Suyu was even more surprised. What kind of treasure was this golden tortoise? Is there something in your arms? The Heartless Iron Constable was observant. She faintly caught a glimpse of the vibration in Suyu's arms. Suyu thought about it. In the end, he did not mention the divine 9-dragon Cauldron. He said, Nothing. Let's go. The 2 of them left the glazed ancient platform and headed for a huge basin they had passed by earlier. Hundreds of poisonous snakes and giant pythons with the strength of the fish-dragon realm lived in the basin. Suyu held the golden tortoise in his left hand and the evil king pearl in his right. Their appearance startled the poisonous snakes and giant pythons. They stuck out their tongues and stared greedily at Suyu and the Heartless Iron Constable. Suyu stretched out the golden tortoise, imitating the Heartless Iron Constable's movements. He released the golden tortoise's aura of the King of Beasts. The Heartless Iron Constable said, Let me do it. Only I can activate it. She reached out and grabbed the golden tortoise's head. However, her arm froze in midair. The golden tortoise was emitting the aura of the King of Beasts. It seemed to be even stronger than when Heartless Iron Constable held it in her hand. The poisonous snakes and giant pythons below immediately retreated back into their snake holes. They were extremely afraid. The heartless Iron Constable's pupils shrank. She could not believe it. How could Suyu control her own treasure? She even had a feeling that Suyu had swapped the golden tortoise with a fake one in his hand. Suyu did not think too much about it. He activated the evil King Pearl with his right hand. A blood-red rune appeared around the evil King Pearl. It was the rune that the Beast Slave King used to control the savage beasts. The evil King Pearl could replicate all attacks. This type of beast-taming technique was also applicable. Swoosh! The talisman chose a venomous python that was tens of thousands of feet long and entered its glabella. However, the rune made by the Beast Slave King could only control Pathmasters of the Master level. The poisonous python was at the higher level of the Fish Dragon realm. It could not do anything to it. What Suyu wanted was not to control it, but to communicate with it. When the rune entered, a spiritual connection immediately appeared between the two. Suyu could hear the inner thoughts of the poisonous python. Fear, fear, fear. This was the portrayal of the poisonous python's inner thoughts. It only had instincts. Suyu said through the spiritual connection, "Listen to my command. I will let you go later. Otherwise, I will eat you." As he spoke, he shook the golden tortoise. To the heartless Iron Constable's disbelief, the golden tortoise seemed to cooperate with Suyu. It immediately released an even more powerful pressure, which made the poisonous python even more afraid. "Let's go," Suyu said as he held the golden tortoise. The poisonous python did not dare to resist. It obediently followed Suyu to the glazed ancient platform. "Go, drive away the people up there." The poisonous python looked at the glazed ancient platform with some fear. It was very afraid of the aura of the great path released from it. It hesitated and did not dare to go up. Suyu furrowed his brows. The poisonous python had no choice but to climb onto the glazed ancient platform. Although Hunting Shadow, Ghastly Shadow, and the two members of the Nine Swords Pavilion were in seclusion, they had left a trace of their souls outside. They immediately sensed the approach of a poisonous python of the Fish Dragon realm. They were so frightened that they fled from the glazed ancient platform. Even Shadow Hunter was extremely fearful. He said in a hoarse voice, "What's going on? Why would the wild beasts here dare to ascend the ancient glazed platform?" Hiss! However, the poisonous python couldn't care less. Under Suyu's control, it chased after them all over the place and went further and further away. Suyu reacted quickly and said, "Quick, take the ancient glazed platform away." When the heartless Iron Arrestor came back to his senses, he immediately joined hands with Suyu to lift the ancient glazed platform. Who would have thought that they would not be able to move the glazed platform at all? The ancient platform was engraved with thousands of great Daos. Lifting the ancient platform meant lifting thousands of great Daos. With their strength, it was naturally difficult for them to succeed. Suyu looked at the golden Xuanwu in his hand and asked the heartless Iron Arrestor, "Does this thing have any other uses?" He had seen it with his own eyes. This thing had an extremely high defensive power and could also launch unknown mysterious attacks. "I can only use a part of it. I have yet to master the rest of its abilities," the heartless Iron Arrestor said regretfully. "Is that so?" Suyu shook it a little disappointedly. "I thought you were an Earth-based treasure, so you should have infinite strength." If the golden Xuanwu could not be used, then he could only use the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron to see if he could absorb it into the Divine Cauldron. In the end, the Xuanwu actually came back to life. Its head moved and its limbs flailed, indicating for Suyu to put it down. "Who are you?" The heartless Iron Arrestor could no longer describe her feelings. She stared at Suyu and asked. The golden Xuanwu had always been a living creature. She knew that. However, even she could rarely make the golden Xuanwu move even for a moment. But Suyu's words had made the golden Xuanwu move on its own. Chapter 2344. Suyu was speechless. "Why don't you ask your precious turtle? I don't know what's going on either." He lowered his body and placed the turtle on the ground. The golden tortoise slowly crawled under the ancient glazed platform. Rumble. Then, with a loud bang, the glazed ancient platform that bore the weight of thousands of great Daos was forcefully carried by an inconspicuous black tortoise. With the weight of the myriad great Daos, only the sacred mountain son of heaven would be able to withstand it. However, the strength of the Xuanwu could be said to be extreme. Suyu was slightly taken aback and said, "Come to my cavern." It let go of the 9 jade spiritual pearl and let the black tortoise crawl in. As expected, the golden Xuanwu obediently crawled over. The heartless iron constable felt uncomfortable. He squatted down and said, "Let me do it." She took out a cavern world and placed it in front of Black Tortoise. However, Xian Wu ignored her and walked straight into Suyu's 9 jade spiritual pearl. With the weight of the ancient glazed platform, there was simply no cavern world that could contain it. Apart from the eye of the heavenly Tao's death eye, it could even withstand so much apocalyptic dust, let alone the glazed ancient platform. This was why Suyu had allowed him to enter the 9 jade spiritual pearl. However, his actions seemed to have caused the heartless iron hunter to misunderstand. She was in low spirits, and as she looked at Suyu with a complicated expression, she did not utter a single word. Suyu did not find it funny. After all, if someone could control his divine 9-dragon cauldron and the divine 9-dragon cauldron had run away with someone else, he would not be able to remain calm either. My cavern world is a special object. Only it can support the glazed ancient platform. Suyu held the heartless iron arrest, jade-like palm, and stuffed the 9 jade spiritual pearl into her hand. I'll let you keep it for now. The 9 jade spiritual pearl had been refined by Suyu many times, so it had long belonged to him. Without Suyu's consent, the heartless iron arrester could not open it even if he took it away. At this moment, the heartless iron constable realized that he had lost his composure. Indeed, with the weight of the ancient glazed platform, the ordinary cavern world that he had just taken out would immediately collapse. Her actions were not in line with her usual indifferent temperament. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel slightly embarrassed. He sighed and said, "Why do I always lose face in front of you?" No matter who she was in front of, she was always successful in every endeavor. She had always presented herself in an otherworldly manner. Suyu was the only one who had been defeated by him the first time they had met, and it was only because he had shown mercy that he had managed to escape. Now, he had once again seen his embarrassed side. She could not help but sigh. It's only human nature, so why would you say that it's embarrassing? Suyu let go of her hand. The heartless iron arrester grabbed his hand again and stuffed the 9 jade spiritual bead back into his hand. "Mr. Su, you have the demeanor of a gentleman. I, Lung Wuxin, am too petty." She could feel that the 9 jade spiritual pearl was extraordinary, and it probably contained something important to Suyu. Even so, he could still trust her unconditionally. On the other hand, she was at a disadvantage. Suyu chuckled, no longer hesitating. He took it and said, "Let's leave this place quickly." The two of them immediately left and hid in the distance to observe. Hunting Shadow and the others were tormented by the poisonous python for a day or two before they finally got rid of it and returned to the ancient glazed platform. So unlucky, disturbing our precious cultivation. The light around Ghost Eye's body dimmed, as if he had suffered quite a bit in the hands of the poisonous python. Hunting Shadow's expression was solemn. "This snake is suspicious. Everyone be careful." The word heart was still hanging by the side of his mouth when he stood rooted to the spot, staring unblinkingly at the empty yellow land in front of him. Ghost Eye and the other two were equally stunned. "Where's the ancient glazed platform?" Ghost Eye looked around, wondering if he had found the wrong place. Hunting Shadow's body was pitch black, as if he was a shadow. At this moment, his body was glowing with a black light. It was unknown whether he was excited or angry. Who is it? Who did this? Thinking of the giant python that had appeared out of nowhere, Hunting Shadow knew that someone was behind this. Suddenly, Hunting Shadow suppressed his voice and shouted, "All of you hide. Someone is coming." The four of them immediately dodged into the darkness. Fortunately, Su Yu and the heartless iron arrester had hidden far away, or they would have bumped into them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Not long after, 3 oars arrived. They were the Bamboo Hat Man, Biyun Hong Xian, and Princess Qianyu, who had arrived later. After the Bamboo Hat Man landed, he looked around, muttering to himself, "Where is the ancient glazed platform? According to the map, it should be nearby. Could they have found the wrong place?" As the Bamboo Hat Man thought, he led the 2 ladies into the air once again, preparing to search the surroundings. In the end, they had just moved when Hunting Shadow and the other 3 flew out from the darkness, surrounding the 3 of them. "Great, it's you," Hunting Shadow shouted. The Bamboo Hat Man looked around furtively, and Hunting Shadow misunderstood them as the culprits. Ghost Shadow's huge eyes flashed, his heart filled with suspicion. If it was really the Bamboo Hat Man's doing, then they had achieved their goal. Why would they return here? But looking at Hunting Shadow in front of him, Ghost Shadow was strangely silent, not waking him up. The Bamboo Hat Man was caught off guard, saying, "There's an ambush to fend." Biyun Hong Xian was expressionless, her hands hidden in her sleeves, golden lights swimming in the depths of her eyes. As for Princess Qianyu, she immediately released the 9 divine body, her heart extremely nervous. They were facing the strongest people in the Sword Seeker Pavilion. How could they meet here? "Stop playing dumb," Hunting Shadow said. "Tell me, where did you hide the ancient glaze platform?" The Bamboo Hat Man was curious about the location of the ancient glaze platform and was slightly confused by his words. But then he understood that the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion had hidden the ancient glaze platform on purpose, lying in ambush here, looking for an excuse to attack. The people of the 9 Swords Pavilion had used similar methods many times in Lioli City. "The thief is calling the thief," the Bamboo Hat Man said coldly. "People of the 9 Swords Pavilion, I don't care how you behave in front of the people of the Palace of Light and the Sleepless Empire. But in front of me, I advise you not to seek your own death." The Bamboo Hat Man's tone was unusually arrogant, looking down on the strongest people of the 9 Swords Pavilion. Hunting Shadow sneered. "I haven't heard anyone speak to me like that in a long time." With his abilities, only Xian Hua could stand a chance against him in the entire Color Glaze civilization, and he would win more often than not. He couldn't believe that he was being threatened by a nameless person. He wondered if Su Yu had destroyed a third of his soul, which was why he was being looked down upon. "Haha, Hunting Shadow, is it?" The Bamboo Hat Man's tone turned cold. "I'll count to 3. Leave the ancient glaze platform behind and scram." 3. The Bamboo Hat Man began counting down. Hunting Shadow laughed angrily. "I'll help you count. 1. The Bamboo Hat Man put down his finger, saying coldly, "Since you want to die, I'll grant your wish." Roar, roar, roar. 6 ferocious beast roars came from the Bamboo Hat Man's body. Hunting Shadow, who had been nonchalant, suddenly had a drastic change in expression. His expression was one of intense pain. "It's a soul attack." He was fearless because he was most proficient in soul attacks. No one could compete with him in terms of soul energy. Who knew that the other party was most proficient in soul attacks? How could Gue Yin and the other 2 be feeling any better? Their souls were in intense pain, and they had no fighting capacity. The Bamboo Hat Man said with disdain, "Hong Xian, Qianyu, what are you waiting for?" Hunting Shadow was a genius nurtured by the Sword Seeker Pavilion after all. After a short moment of pain, he immediately recovered and began his counterattack. "Set up the formation." Gue Yin and the other 2 immediately accompanied Hunting Shadow, releasing 18 pitch-black small mirrors. The surface of the small mirrors was pitch black, like 18 ancient wells, swallowing all the soul attacks that came their way. At the same time, Hunting Shadow shattered into countless shadow fragments, scattering all over the land. He circled the Bamboo Hat Man, looking for an opportunity to attack. Gue Yin and the other 2 attacked him head-on. It was as if they had gained the upper hand in the blink of an eye. The Bamboo Hat Man laughed coldly. "You overestimate yourself." Another violent roar. A blood-red beast soul came out from under the Bamboo Hat Man's straw cape, whistling. It opened its giant mouth and inhaled. A huge suction force no weaker than Su Yu's soul vortex swept across the area. A large number of shadow fragments were sucked away and chewed by the beast's soul. Ah! A cry of pain could be heard. The remaining shadow fragments reformed into hunting shadow, looking at the bamboo hat man in fear. If you were good at something else, I might be afraid of you. But unfortunately, I specialize in restraining souls. The bamboo hat man's straw cape swelled, as if something was about to escape. The bamboo hat man's expression changed, saying hurriedly, "Retreat." Was there still a need to continue fighting after encountering someone who could restrain him? But the bamboo hat man had no intention of letting him leave. He said with a faint smile, "Didn't I say that I would grant you your wish if you wish to die? Isn't it too late to regret now? All of you shall remain as my nourishment." 6 beast souls flew out from under the bamboo hat man's straw cape. Hunting Shadow's expression changed drastically. A single beast soul had swallowed a considerable portion of his soul, let alone 6. He was a delicacy delivered to his doorstep. Roar! The 6 beast souls whistled toward them, about to swallow their souls. But at that moment, the 2 members of the 9 Swords cabinet behind Gui Ing convulsed, then exploded from the inside out. Blood splattered everywhere, condensing into the figure of an old man bathed in blood. Under the cover of the fresh blood, his eyes were exceptionally dark. He said, "Youngster, one should forgive and forget whenever possible. Why are you so stubborn?" The 6 beast souls pounced toward him. The man covered in blood merely extended a finger and flicked it, sending the 6 beast souls flying. The bamboo hat man's laughter froze as he stared at the man shrouded in blood before him. When the blood on his body slowly dripped down his face, revealing his true appearance, the bamboo hat man gasped. "Master of the sword-seeking pavilion, ghost teacher?" Princess Qianyue, who was at the side, shuddered, her pretty eyes wide. How could you have entered the Glaze Ancient Cave? The Glaze Ancient Cave only allowed juniors to enter. How could a powerful martial artist like Ghost Teacher sneak in under the noses of her father and Guangmingyu? The heartless Iron Constable, who was hiding in the dark, was also surprised. The sword-seeking pavilion master had sneaked in. Only Suyu remained calm, not too surprised. When he saw Ghost Teacher in front of the Glaze Ancient Cave, he had felt that there was something wrong with him. But Xiao Laifeng and Guangmingyu did not say anything, so Suyu pretended not to know. He never thought that the Ghost Teacher outside was a fake. The real Ghost Teacher had used some secret technique to hide in the bodies of the 2 members of the 9 Swords cabinet, and when necessary, he would sacrifice them to reveal his true self. Chapter 2345. The Ghost Master was really resourceful. Suyu couldn't help but secretly admire his ability, as he had managed to sneak into the Glaze Ancient Cave without anyone knowing. It was no wonder that the 4 from the 9 Swords Pavilion were able to successfully reach the Earth Layer Glazed Ancient Platform. Ghost Teacher must have secretly helped them along the way. "Little baby, I didn't want to make things difficult for you, but you don't know what's good for you and want to court death." Ghost Master's eyes were cold and murderous. He did not want Xiao Laifeng and Radiant Jade to find out that he had snuck into the Glazed Ancient Cave. Otherwise, those 2 fellows would definitely settle the score with him. Thus, he could only send the 2 of them on their way and kill them to silence them. Feeling the Ghost Teacher's killing intent, the bamboo hat man's heart shuddered. He shouted in a low voice, "Swordsmanship-seeking pavilion leader, think carefully before you act." With a swish, he threw out an antique tortoise shell. The tortoise shell was densely covered with many mysterious runes that seemed to be used for divination. Upon seeing this item, Ghost Master's pupils constricted. Old Man Profound Secrets item? In the Western region, there was no one who didn't know who Old Man Profound Secrets was. He was the supreme figure who ruled over the entire Western region's Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. His cultivation was extremely high. When he had opened up the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce in the Western region, he had challenged all the 9 great 7-star civilizations on his own. All the super experts had accepted his challenge, and in the end, he had not suffered a single defeat. Ghost Master could still remember the feeling of being as insignificant as a speck of dust in front of Old Man Profound Secrets. This feeling of extreme inferiority was something he had only felt from the old monsters of the Xiandao Palace. The turtle shell in the bamboo hat man's hand was the Old Man Profound Secrets divination tool, and it rarely left his side. Now that it had appeared in the hands of the man in bamboo hat, how could the Ghost Master not be afraid? Ghost Master's expression changed again and again. In the end, he did not dare to take the risk of offending Old Man Profound Secrets. He snorted and said, "Consider yourself lucky." Scram! The man in the bamboo hat glanced at the empty glazed platform and left with regret. After he left, Hunting Shadow said, "Master, why didn't you make them stay? The glazed ancient cave is isolated from the rest of the world. Even if I really killed him, Old Man Profound Secrets might not know." But Ghost Master shook his head, his face solemn. "You don't understand how terrifying Old Man Profound Secrets is. In all my life, he is the only person I know who can divine the secrets of the heavens. To be enemies with such a person, you must be prepared to lose your life." Divination? The higher one's cultivation base was, the more one would believe in such mysterious things. Hunting Shadow's scalp went numb. He could imagine that if they really killed the man in the bamboo hat, Old Man Profound Secrets might be able to divine it. Moreover, compared to chasing after them, retrieving the glazed ancient platform is naturally more important. The ghost teacher's face suddenly became gloomy. He turned his head and stared in the direction of Su Yu and the Wuxin iron arrester. "Isn't that so, the two of you?" The heartless iron constable's face was calm. He knew that he had been discovered. Su Yu, on the other hand, was as calm as an ancient well. He was not surprised at all. How difficult was it to hide in front of a super expert? When the ghost teacher appeared, Su Yu knew that he had been discovered. Schwa, Su Yu and the heartless iron arrester had a tacit understanding, and they sped off into the distance at the same time. While galloping, the heartless iron constable also summoned the gold and silver horses. The two of them mounted their horses and left quickly. Although the appearance of the ghost teacher was extremely unexpected, Su Yu still successfully completed his plan and obtained the glazed ancient platform. Now it all depended on how to get rid of Ghost Master. Hiss! The gold and silver horses neighed and stepped into the space to escape. "Humph! So it's you." The ghost teacher saw that one of the two was Su Yu, and he was filled with hatred. How many times had this person spoiled his plans? Hunting Shadow also saw it clearly, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "I want to tear you into pieces." The person who had caused him to lose a third of his soul was this human named Su Yu. The ghost teacher waved his sleeves, sweeping up Hunting Shadow and the ghost eye in pursuit. It went without saying how fast a super expert speed was. Space Realm. Su Yu did not even turn his head, activating the space realm. At once, the space where the ghost teacher was constantly folding and folding. The ghost teacher broke through a layer of folded barriers, then fell into another layer of barriers. This repeated, making it seem like he was advancing rapidly, but in reality, he was still in the same place. Little B asterisk starred. The ghost teacher felt that he was being played like a monkey by Su Yu. He was furious. "You dare to embarrass yourself with the middle-grade space realm everywhere." With a low grunt, the ghost teacher's entire body was filled with ghost energy. Countless ghost shadows rushed out, gnawing at the space realm. This caused a flaw to appear in the space realm. The ghost teacher's nostrils flared. He took advantage of this flaw and broke through the space realm. Chase after him. The murderous intent in his eyes intensified. Although he was dismissive of Su Yu's space realm, his heart was filled with awe. Su Yu's space realm should be at the entry level, not even at the beginner level. Even so, it still lasted a long time under the ghost teacher's middle-grade space realm. The space realm deserved its reputation. Therefore, he was even more determined to kill Su Yu. This person's potential was too great. If he did not kill him today, he would kill him in the future. Moreover, he held the contract with the sword-seeking pavilion. How could he allow him to leave the Glaze ancient cave alive? Boom! The ghost teacher activated the space realm, which turned into a pair of giant wings behind him. With a flap of the wings, lightning flashed and thunder roared. His speed increased by more than 3 times. The distance that Suyu had managed to widen with great difficulty was immediately caught up by the ghost teacher. Feeling the piercingly cold energy behind her, the heartless iron hunter looked calm. She turned her head and said, "Try controlling my treasure." She pinned her hopes on the golden Xuanwu. Suyu shook his head slightly. The golden Xuanwu was powerful, but it was supporting the evil crossing lotus at the moment and could not free itself. Not for the time being. I prepared something for this old man. Suyu dropped an extremely cold needle from his sleeve. It was the 9-5 heavens cold needle. He turned his head to look behind him, and the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. "I wish you good luck, old thing." Swoosh! With a flick of his hand, the 9-5 heavens cold needle flew out and shot toward the ghost teacher, who was galloping behind him. Although the ghost teacher was moving at a high speed, his reflexes were very agile. With a flap of his wings, he immediately dodged the 9-5 heavens cold needle. He sneered coldly. "If Xiao Lifeng used the 9-5 heavens cold needle personally, I might have some fear, but you—" Huh! The extreme cold within the 9-5 heavens cold needle could seal the fish dragon realm master into ice shards on the spot. Even a super strong man like the ghost teacher would be slightly affected if he was hit by the needle. However, Suyu's cultivation was too low, and it would be difficult for the needle to harm him. "Is that so?" Suyu smiled lightly. The ghost teacher's heart thumped, and he realized that something was amiss. He saw that the 9-5 heavens cold needle had clearly flown past him, but it twisted strangely and pierced into his arm. Space field. It turned out that Suyu had already used the space field to a very precise degree. At the same time that he shot out the 9-5 heavens cold needle, he added a hint of the space field that was hard to detect. Under the effect of the space field, the 9-5 heavens cold needle could twist at an incredible angle. The ghost teacher had nowhere to hide, and he could only operate a thick layer of the Path Master's strength on the surface of his body. With his strong physique, he should have been able to block it. However, his expression changed drastically when the whiff of the space field ignored his defense, allowing the 9-5 heavens cold needle to pierce into his flesh without any resistance. All of a sudden, the ghost teacher let out a muffled groan. The air that came out his groan was cold air. His skin began to turn pale and lose its color, and a thin layer of ice was continuously forming on the surface of his body. The 9-5 heavens cold needle had begun to take effect. "Master!" Hunting Shadow's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly imbued the Path Master's strength into the ghost teacher to resist the cold air. However, as soon as he touched it, he himself began to be corroded by the cold air. "Don't touch me, you can't do anything to the cold air of the 9-5 heavens cold needle. Just protect me." The ghost teacher was in a difficult situation, and he could no longer speak fluently. Hunting Shadow was filled with grief and anger. He ordered, "Ghost Eye, you take the back. I'll take the front." The two of them sandwiched the ghost teacher in the middle, keeping their guard up against Suyu. Wuxin Tai Constable reined in the horse's reins, a thoughtful look in her eyes. "Do you still have any tricks up your sleeves?" If not, then he had to take this opportunity to escape. "Of course I do." Suyu took out the 9 jade spiritual pearl. There was an eye on it, and an imperceptible bolt of lightning was swimming in the eye. That was the remnant lightning arc of the Yuan level field. Once it struck the ghost teacher, he would be crippled even if he did not die. Of course, Suyu did not use it immediately. Instead, he concealed the existence of the lightning arc without batting an eyelid. He pulled out the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword and said, "You keep Hunting Shadow occupied. Leave the ghost teacher to me." Wuxin Tai Constable nodded, turned her horse around, and charged back. She raised her hand and launched an attack on Hunting Shadow. Her abilities had always been strong and famous. Hunting Shadow did not dare underestimate her. He clenched his teeth and fought with all his might. Suyu attacked the ghost teacher. "Ghost Eye," shouted, "do not touch the pavilion master." As he spoke, he pounced towards Suyu without fear of death. Suyu did not even look at him. He sent him flying with a kick and slashed at the ghost teacher's head from top to bottom with his sword. He activated the heavenly dragon body, exerting his strength to the extreme. The ghost teacher's entire body was frozen. It was impossible for him to defend against this sword with the hardness of his body alone. This sword would definitely take away half of his life, or even kill him directly. Creak! The royal scepter dragon sword drew a long trail of sparks in the air. It slashed at the ghost teacher in a beautiful arc ghost eye, and hunting shadow's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. But they could not help. They could only watch as the ghost teacher was sliced into two. Wuxing Tai Constable also had a surreal feeling. One of the three great super fighters of the Colored Glaze civilization had died, just like that. But just as the royal scepter dragon sword was about to slash at his neck, the ghost teacher, who was clearly frozen and unable to move, raised his right hand like lightning. His middle and index fingers clamped down on the blade of the royal scepter dragon sword with great force and precision. No matter how much strength Su Yu exerted, he could not hold down those two fingers. Su Yu's expression changed greatly. You were pretending to be injured? He looked at the ghost teacher's face again. Indeed, there was no longer any pain. The ice on his body melted continuously, and his face quickly regained its color. Chapter 2346. If he really did not have any way to deal with the 9-5 Heaven's Cold Needle, he would have been chased by Xiao Lifeng to the ends of the earth. He had pretended to be injured to lure Su Yu over. Otherwise, if this continued, when would it ever end? In the end, Su Yu had underestimated the true power of a super strong martial artist. The heartless Iron Constable's heart thumped. Leave quickly. She forced Hunting Shadow back, rushing over. Hunting Shadow was overjoyed, laughing maniacally. Leave? Did you ask for our permission? He transformed into millions of shadow fragments, rushing over to block the heartless Iron Constable's path. The heartless Iron Constable was anxious, but she had no choice but to resist Hunting Shadow. The ghost teacher laughed coldly. He stared at Su Yu's eyes and said, "Say goodbye to this world." He clamped the royal dragon sword with one hand and extended a finger with the other, pointing it at Su Yu's chest. This was the attack of a super strong martial artist. With Su Yu's current physique, he would undoubtedly die. But at that moment, Su Yu's lips curled up again. "I'll return the same words to you," he said indifferently. He loosened his fist, revealing the 9 jade spiritual pearl, revealing a shred of the Yuan level domain within. The domain had just appeared, but it released a terrifying power that could destroy the Milky Way and the universe. The Ghost Master shuddered, his pupils constricting to the size of a needle. This is the Yuan level domain from a few months ago. Correct. So you clenched his fist, activating the desolate energy in his body and activating the 9 jade spiritual pearl. The eyes of the 9 jade spiritual pearl flickered, and the Yuan level domain within flew out like a dragon emerging from the sea, entering the Ghost Master's body. Bang! With a loud bang, the Ghost Master was blasted into pieces by the Yuan level domain from the inside out. He turned into ghost mist, scattering everywhere. Everything happened so suddenly that Hunting Shadow and the heartless Iron Constable had no time to react. Su had been tricked, so why was the Ghost Master the one who died? Su Yu stared at the fragments on the ground, his expression calm. He had always been meticulous, and had never expected the 9-5 Heaven's Cold Needle to kill a super strong martial artist. His real trump card was this Yuan level domain. The reason why he used the 9-5 Heaven's Cold Needle was to divert the Ghost Master's attention and find an opportunity to launch the 9-5 Heaven's Cold Needle to deal a fatal blow. Unexpectedly, the ghost teacher pretended to be seriously injured to lure Su Yu closer. He was practically inviting Su Yu to stab him with his sword. Then why was Su Yu being so courteous? Of course, he would go with the flow and deliver a fatal blow at close range. Master, Hunting Shadow couldn't believe it. A moment later, his eyes widened and he pounced over with a roar. Ghost Eye also went forward in a panic to check on Ghost Teacher. Su Yu frowned slightly. Why did the two of them not seem to think that the Ghost Teacher was dead? At this moment, The broken pieces of Ghost Master squirmed and reassembled into a complete Ghost Master. Suyu's eyes became gloomy. A top-notch Pathmaster who had surpassed the Fish Dragon realm was really not easy to kill. His body had been shattered to this extent, but he could still be reborn immediately? No wonder he could merge with the bodies of the two disciples and successfully sneak into the glazed ancient cave. Just as Suyu was about to think of another way, a muffled sound of thunder suddenly came from within the ghost teacher's body, causing it to explode into pieces. It turned out that the remnant power of the Yuan-level realm had not dissipated and was still lingering in the body. The shattered ghost teacher tried to fuse again, only to be blasted into pieces again. This repeated, and the speed of the ghost teacher's fusion became slower and slower. After the final fusion, the ghost teacher could no longer care about Suyu. He grabbed Ghost Eye and Hunting Shadow and fled in a panic. Before he left, he angrily shouted, "Little B asterisk starred, just you wait," bang. Another loud noise blasted the ghost teacher into pieces. But the moment before the explosion, the ghost teacher used some secret technique and instantly disappeared without a trace. The heartless Iron Constable immediately rode the gold and silver horses to search for him. She said helplessly, "His scent has also been erased. There's no way to chase after him." As she spoke, she sized up Suyu with surprise and suspicion. She did not expect that not only did Suyu not die in the Yuan-level realm, but he had even refined a shred of it. And he had endured it until now, not using it. Previously, Suyu had been chased by that wild wolf, but he had never used this item, until today, when he had used it at the most appropriate time. "Fortunately, I have never been your enemy," the heartless Iron Constable said. Suyu smiled calmly. "Me too." Disregarding everything else, just the heartless Iron Constable's golden Xuanwu alone was enough to give him a headache. The two of them were talking about something when suddenly the gold and silver horses neighed for no reason. Their hooves moved restlessly, looking exceptionally frightened. Suyu rolled his eyes and said, "Let's leave this place quickly." The appearance of the Yuan-level realm just now had caused a commotion that would have alarmed half of the earthly realm. Something might have been attracted here. The heartless Iron Constable also sensed that something was amiss. She leaped onto the gold and silver horses and pulled Suyu into the space immediately. Unexpectedly, as soon as they entered, they suddenly felt the space tremble violently. It was like an earthquake. The entire space was completely shattered, and there were space reversals everywhere. The gold and silver horses had no choice but to burrow back through a broken space to avoid being swallowed by the space reversals. The place where they appeared was only 100 million miles away from the place where they had just fought. Looking at the place where they had fought, the two of them sucked in a breath of cold air. They saw a two-headed lion slamming its gigantic claws against the battlefield, smashing all the space there into pieces. Judging from the ferocious aura released by the lion, it was no less than that of the ghost teacher. Suyu's heart trembled. It had actually attracted the king of 10,000 beasts of the earthly realm. Its cultivation had reached the ranks of the super strong. Suyu and the heartless Iron Constable calmly concealed their auras and moved stealthily in the forest. However, they had only taken a few steps when a violent smashing sound behind them suddenly subsided. At the same time, the top of their heads suddenly darkened. Looking up, two mountain-sized eyes stared at the two of them without blinking. From the lion's mouth, saliva flowed like a waterfall, drenching the two of them. Suyu's scalp went numb, and he immediately grasped the 9-jade spiritual pearl. He could only make the golden Xuanwu give up the glazed ancient platform and use the aura of the king of 10,000 beasts to scare the lion away. However, the lion had no intention of attacking. Instead, it crouched down. Its head was lowered, lying in front of the two of them, groaning and groaning from its nostrils. Suyu and the heartless Iron Constable both sensed that something was amiss. They flew into the air to take a look, only to see a demon subduing pestle inserted into the lion's neck. The pestle was constantly releasing an unusually cold energy, causing the lion great pain. It must be begging us to help it remove the demon's subduing pestle, right? The heartless iron constable understood. The pestle contained the power of the martial path, and could not be removed by brute force alone. The lion must have suffered for a long time, and could not be removed for a long time. When it sensed that there were martial artists fighting, it came over to seek help. You decide, the heartless iron constable said. The lions in the glazed ancient cave were, after all, wild beasts that had yet to develop spiritual intelligence. If they helped it remove the demon-subduing pestle, it was hard to say whether it would bite back. Suyu pondered for a moment, then flew down and grabbed the 1,000-foot-long demon-subduing pestle. He imbued it with the power of desolation, pulled it out with force, and successfully removed it. Roar! All of a sudden, the lion roared in pain, and black blood spurted from its neck. Suyu flew back to the heartless iron constable's side, secretly guarding against the lion's next move. Fortunately, the lion did not attack as he had imagined. Instead, it growled at Suyu and the heartless iron constable and shook its shoulders. "It wants us to go up?" the heartless iron constable asked uncertainly. Suyu said, "Let's go up first." At least the lion did not have any malicious intentions, and following it would be safer. After the two of them jumped up, the lion got up and strode toward the border of the earth realm. There, an incomparably wide river lay in front of them, with no end in sight. Connecting the two sides of the river was an extraordinarily long bridge. Standing on the other side of the bridge, one could occasionally see enormous beasts with terrifying auras walking in the fog on the other side of the river. Without a doubt, the other side of the bridge was the most mysterious heaven realm, a place where even the weakest of the beasts were super strong. There was even a king of beasts that was superior to the super strong. "Why did you bring us here?" Suyu tried to ask. Although the lion did not understand what Suyu was talking about, it could roughly understand his doubts. It raised a paw and pointed at the center of the bridge. There was a vague fog in the center of the bridge. Suyu looked carefully and vaguely found several extraordinarily tall creatures in the fog. They were sitting cross-legged and training there. "There are other people in the Glaze ancient cave?" Suyu thought of the demon's subduing pestle that was stabbed into the lion's neck. Among the people who entered from the three great influences of the Glaze civilization, none of them used a demon's subduing pestle as a treasure. Moreover, Xianhua and the others had stayed in the Earth Realm. The plated bamboo hat man and the other two escaped. The ghost master and the other two also escaped. Then, who were the people on the bridge? Was there another entrance to the Glaze ancient cave? Right at this moment, the tallest person on the bridge stood up, looked over from the fog, and scolded, "What a bold beast! How dare you come here and disturb our training?" That voice was so forceful that Suyu felt like it was deafening even from half a bridge away. His body was in turmoil. Looking at the heartless iron constable, his breath was in a mess, and he was trying to adjust his state of mind. Suyu was extremely shocked. A single sentence from a distance was enough to make the two of them feel uncomfortable. What kind of cultivation was this? The Glazed Divine Realm is not for beasts to enter. Leave quickly, the tall figure shouted again. The lion roared unwillingly, but it did not dare to confront him. It whimpered and left with its head lowered. Obviously, the demon's subduing pestle on its neck was done by the tall figure. After watching the lion leave, the tall figure returned to the center of the bridge and continued to train with his legs crossed. However, Suyu and the Wuxin Iron Constable were deeply shocked. What did the Glazed Divine Realm mean? How did those people enter the Glaze ancient cave? Their minds were full of questions. The Wuxin Iron Constable pondered for a long time. Her eyes flickered slightly, showing her inner turmoil. She looked at Suyu and said, "Who do you think they are?" Suyu murmured, "Haven't you already guessed it?" The two of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Chapter 2347. Wuxin Tai Constable's calm face was covered with a layer of surprise. He said slowly, "I think they are the indigenous people born in the heavenly layer." Suyu nodded, but he shook his head in his heart. To be precise, they should be the living creatures that survived from the previous era, the nightmare-crossing lotus throne that the unparalleled Emperor Master, the absolute saint, had painstakingly built was not a complete failure. At least a few people had survived and had been hiding in the heavenly layer all this time. So you could not help but wonder how many people had survived from the previous era. There were more than 3 nightmare crossing Lotus Thrones. There were other nightmare crossing Lotus Thrones, but he did not know where they were. Did the nightmare crossing Lotus Thrones successfully protect those powerful beings? Moreover, half of the powerful beings did not choose the nightmare crossing Lotus Thrones back then. Instead, they used other methods to survive the great calamity of the world. If they were still alive, where were they now, and what were they planning to do? As he pondered, the demon subduing pestle in his hand suddenly trembled and slipped out of his hand. Suyu subconsciously grabbed it and caught it. A soft sound of surprise came from the bridge. That's strange. That beast seems to have something on it that is preventing the demon subduing pestle from returning. It turned out to be a tall figure on the bridge, preparing to retrieve the demon subduing pestle. Wait, that lion seems to have the aura of a martial artist. No, it's the aura of the dragon race. A tall figure said in surprise. Really? Another tall figure stood up abruptly. At that moment, the tallest figure among them stood up. His eyes were filled with ecstasy as he laughed heartily. It's the will of the heavens. We were about to give up, but a dragon came to us. Hearing their words, Suyu's heart thumped. He had a very bad feeling about this. The dragon race they were talking about should be him, right? Crack! The 3 of them walked toward the shore. With every step they took, terrifying heavenly thunder and earthly fire descended, as if they were obstructing them from reaching the shore of the heavenly layer. However, they completely ignored it and continued to press forward. The clouds and mist on the bridge flowed rapidly, turning into bursts of white mist that rushed into the heavenly layer. Wherever the white mist passed, all the trees and flowers withered and died, losing their vitality. After confirming that they had come for him, Suyu's expression changed. He shoved the 9 jade spiritual pearl into Wuxin Tai Constable's hands and shouted, "Take it and get away from me quickly." The other party had come for him, and having Heartless Iron Constable by his side would only increase the danger. Are they doing this for you? The Heartless Iron Arrester immediately understood Suyu's intentions. He was trying to protect her. He even entrusted such an important 9 jade spiritual pearl to her. Hurry up. Suyu's voice was grave. The 3 of them could very well be unparalleled almighties from the previous era. They were the mighty masters of the world. Once they descended, Suyu would not be able to resist them at all. With Heartless Iron Constable by his side, he would only suffer undeserved disasters. He might as well give her the most important 9 jade spiritual pearl. If he was still alive, he would naturally look for the Heartless Iron Constable to get it back. If she died, the 9 jade spiritual pearl would lose its master and open automatically. She would be able to retrieve the golden Xuanwu. The Heartless Iron Constable bit her red lips. She looked at the 3 figures that were walking over step by step, causing one to feel suffocated. She clenched her teeth and said, "Do you have anything to say?" If those 3 people had really come for Suyu, he would most likely die. So, she was asking for Suyu's last words. As a constable, she had seen too many of her fellow constables fall before her eyes. The Heartless Iron Constable was already numb to their deaths. But the eternal parting with Suyu made her feel an inexplicable pain in her heart. Say something. Many people flashed through Suyu's mind. Finally, his mind fixed on the image of Qin Xian'er. His eyes were filled with regret. Qin Xian'er had forgotten about him and everything that had happened between them. She only remembered his name. That was all. If I meet someone named Qin Xian'er. Suyu wanted to say something, but Qin Xian'er was still in the distant Azura civilization. It would take 1,000 years to get there. So what if he said something? It's fine. You can go. Suyu waved his hand desolately. The Heartless Iron Constable slowly closed her eyes. She murmured the 3 words Qin Xian'er in her heart. She nodded and said, "Come back alive." She knew that the chances of Suyu coming back alive were very slim. Touching the left side of her chest, the Heartless Iron Constable leaped onto the gold and silver horse and left alone. She knew that she was powerless with her current strength. All she could do was carry out his last words, even though they were Su Yu's unfinished last words. The lion seemed to have sensed the abnormality of the three tall figures. It was so frightened that it immediately ran away. Not long after it ran away, a violent thunderclap came from behind. So you look back. At the end of the world, dense thunderbolts crisscrossed and fell with a loud rumble, bombarding the three tall figures. However, the three figures were not afraid. They finally stepped onto the earth layer from the magnificent bridge. The moment their feet touched the earth layer, the earth trembled and the mountains shook. The weather changed. Many spiritual veins dried up in an instant. Countless plants lost their vitality. The spiritual energy in the world disappeared. The earth layer, which had been full of vitality before, became a barren, abandoned land in the blink of an eye. As for the three figures, they had not done anything at all. They had merely stepped on it with one foot. Annoying rules. The figure on the left looked up at the increasingly turbulent thunderbolts. He opened his mouth wide and swallowed all the thunderbolts that filled the sky. The strength of the thunderbolts was second only to the wisp of Yuan realm. The figure on the right was a little helpless. If it is not necessary, I really do not want to step onto the earth layer. Once we come, the earth layer will be destroyed. They were so powerful that the earth layer could not accommodate their existence at all. It was like a vessel that was forcibly stuffed with something much larger than itself. The consequence was that the vessel would be destroyed. He took a step forward. All of a sudden, layers of raging flames emerged from the ground, burning everything from the ground to the ground. Countless fish dragon realm beasts could not resist the raging flames at all. They were all burned to ashes alive. Only the lion seemed to be deliberately protected. There was not a single trace of flame within 1,000 feet of it. The figure in the middle looked at the lion indifferently. To be exact, he was looking at the person on top of it. With just one look, Su Yu spat out a mouthful of blood with a cry. His heavenly dragon body was like a piece of paper, its insides completely shattered. Too weak. The figure in the middle shook his head in disappointment. However, there's indeed the bloodline of the dragon clan, although it is not pure. Su Yu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Looking at the destroyed earth layer, his heart became extremely heavy. The strength of these three people was no weaker than the second clone of Prince Xiaoyao. Follow us, the figure in the middle said expressionlessly. Su Yu hesitated. If he resisted with all his might, he would only die. He would not be able to harm even a hair of theirs. If he followed them, he could still act according to the circumstances. The figure on the right said indifferently, "Little ant, how hard can it be to take your life? Follow us, and after we succeed, we will give you supreme luck." Su Yu was calm. He jumped off the lion and walked towards them. The figure on the left shook his huge gray robe, shielding Su Yu under it. Then, he turned and stepped onto the nameless bridge. The moment he stepped onto the bridge, endless heavenly thunder came crashing down. Every bolt of lightning had the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was extremely terrifying. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. If he had been alone, he might not have been able to withstand all of them. With the protection of the gray-robed man, Su Yu was safe and sound until he reached the center of the bridge. Standing in the middle of the bridge, Su Yu could feel the intensity of the aura released by the nightmare-crossing lotus. It was incomparably intense. It was at least 100 times stronger than the one in the human layer. No wonder the three of them wanted to train in the middle of the bridge. The third nightmare, crossing lotus, must be near the bridge, right? Insect ancestor, take out that thing. The figure in the middle addressed the figure on the left as the insect ancestor. The so-called ancestor was the supreme existence of a certain race. For example, the human ancestor. He was an absolute existence that destroyed 2 Saint Mountain heavenly suns with his own strength. This person was called the human ancestor. Even if he was not the human ancestor, he was definitely a great ruler of the previous era. The bone ancestor only knows how to order people around. The insect ancestor laughed dryly with dissatisfaction and grabbed the river from a distance. Crash! The whole river suddenly turned upside down and split into two from the middle, revealing an extremely deep riverbed. The riverbed was filled with the bones of various wild beasts. It should be the bones of the wild beasts that had died in the river for many years. But the most conspicuous one was an incomparably huge dragon skeleton. It was lying at the bottom of the riverbed. Its entire skeleton was a dreamy nine-colored crystal color, flickering with extremely bright light. This was the bone of the dragon clan, but the color of the skeleton. He had seen the remains of the dragon emperor before, and its whole body was golden. The nine-colored crystal dragon skeleton in front of him was really something he had never seen before. Sigh, it's a pity that the ancestral dragon was one of the 9 great divine ancestors back then. The insect ancestor sighed with regret. The bone ancestor was expressionless. It should be said that because the 3 of us did not enter the ranks of the 9 great divine ancestors, we were ignored by the Saint Mountain and escaped this calamity. The 2 of them reminisced about the past. The figure on the far right said indifferently, "The 2 of you, business is more important. Whether we can survive this new calamity depends on whether the thing in the ancestral dragon's body can be activated." The insect ancestor glanced at him. Since the snake ancestor is so concerned, why don't you do it? The person on the right was the snake ancestor. Dragons and snakes had something in common. Once the thing in the ancestral dragon's body was taken out, the one most likely to control it was the snake ancestor. However, the ancestral dragon was known as one of the 9 great divine ancestors of the previous era. His remains were still filled with dangers that they did not dare to underestimate. Hence, no one wanted to act rashly. The 3 old ancestor-level masters looked at each other. Finally, they reached a tacit understanding and looked at Suyu. "Junior, the 3 of us have decided that you will go into the ancestral dragon's body to take out an item." Suyu cursed in his heart. If even the 3 old ancestor-level masters did not want to go, wouldn't it be courting death for him to go? "Seniors, my strength is weak. I'm afraid I can't take on your request." Suyu cupped his fists. The insect ancestor smiled faintly. "You are indeed too weak. Hence, we will not let you die in vain." As he spoke, he extended a finger towards Suyu. A milky white little worm came out of his finger and landed on Suyu's shoulder. This thing is called the Tribulation Spiritual Worm. It can devour all attacks that are not higher than my realm. Hold it well. Chapter 2348. So you didn't know how high the realm of the insect ancestor was. However, it was definitely not higher than the ancestor. This is a snake gallbladder. After swallowing it, it can cure all injuries, including the injuries of the heavenly law. The snake ancestor took out a pale green snake gallbladder and handed it to Suyu. Injuries of the heavenly law. Suyu's heart moved, and he asked, "Is it effective for those whose memories have been erased by the heavenly law?" He thought of Qin Xiener. Was having her memory erased also considered a trauma? The snake ancestor said lightly, "It is effective, but it is not obvious." Even so, Suyu still felt happy. Even if there was only a little effect, Suyu was extremely satisfied. The last was the bone ancestor. He took out a broken gray bone and said, "This bone contains a trace of my divine power. I hope it can be used at critical moments." Suyu took it, and the skin of his palm immediately began to rot. The deep burning pain stimulated his nerves, forcing Suyu to release the dragon scales to isolate the corrosion on his bones. Seeing the dragon scales appearing on his arms, the pupils of the 3 ancestors changed, revealing a touch of excitement and expectation. "Go!" The snake ancestor was a little impatient and urged. Suyu had no choice but to go to the remains of the ancestor and try. It was a very dangerous trip, and he would most likely die. However, if he didn't go, he would die immediately. He secretly gritted his teeth. He would remember this debt for the time being. If he had a chance to retaliate, he would definitely let them taste the bitterness. "I still don't know what the 3 elders want me to find." Suyu asked. The bone ancestor took out a dull pearl. "You have this pearl with you. When you get close to that thing, it will emit a dazzling red light." "Is that so?" "Understood." So you jumped off the bridge. The bottom of the river didn't seem very high, but Suyu jumped and found that he couldn't reach the bottom. The higher he fell, the deeper the bottom of the river became. However, in the eyes of the three ancestors on the bridge, Suyu's figure became smaller and smaller after jumping down, and finally disappeared like a sesame seed. After waiting for an era, a person with the bloodline of the dragon clan has finally come. The snake ancestor sighed. We can take back the wool left by the human weight and the earth weight. The insect ancestor slightly raised his head and inhaled towards the sky. In the human weight far away, a wild wolf coiled in a cave suddenly twisted its body in pain. From the corner of his eye, a moth flew out and quickly flew towards the sky character. There were also many other wild beasts that had worms flying out of their bodies after suffering for a while. It turned out that the reason why Suyu had been relentlessly pursued by the wild wolf was because Suyu's unique dragon aura had attracted the attention of the moth in the wild wolf's body. Suyu had thought that it was strange. As food, he should not have been chased by the wild wolf to such an extent. But now the truth was out. Because the third ancestor was too powerful, it was inconvenient for her to personally go and capture the intruders of the dragon clan. Therefore, they could only rely on the humanoid beasts to help them find it. I wonder if he can successfully obtain that thing. Insect ancestor kept his insects and stared at that long ancestral dragon bone with a nervous heart. Ancestor Bone said coldly, "You have to succeed whether you succeed or not. The destruction of a new era is about to begin, but we are trapped here, unable to leave. Only by obtaining the item will we have the chance to leave." Snake ancestor and insect ancestor suddenly felt a sense of urgency. A trace of cold hostility appeared on snake ancestor's face. "When I get out, the first person I want to kill is that old thing Lu ancestor. If not for his scheme, we would have left this place on the day of the restart of the era." Insect ancestor was also extremely resentful. "The day we break the seal is the day he dies." Listening to his tone, it seemed that they were trapped here not by choice. Instead, they were set up by a companion who was also an ancestor. Ancestor Bone said indifferently, "All right, let's prepare for the sacrificial refining first. It will take a few years for the sacrificial refining to be complete." At that time, after 3 days, Suyu finally landed on the skeleton successfully. Looking from the bridge, the ancestral dragon skeleton was only 1,000,000 feet in size. But when he landed on its body, he found that its body was as big as a continent. He couldn't see the end of it at all. The thing that the third ancestor mentioned did not have a specific location. He could only sense it with the pearl in his chest. In desperation, Suyu could only wander around on foot to look for it. He tried to take a step forward. Unexpectedly, an extremely hot purple-black flame appeared under his feet. Dragon's breath? Suyu's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately rose into the air. At the place where he stood, the air was burned by the dragon's breath. The soles of Suyu's feet were also swept by the dragon's breath, and serious burns appeared. It was hard to imagine what would happen if Suyu did not react in time and was engulfed by the dragon's breath. Even walking is so difficult. Suyu's heart sank, but the difficulty was just the beginning. He tried to fly, but found that the atmosphere here was abnormally solid. His flying speed was as slow as a snail. With such a huge dragon skeleton and such a speed, it would be impossible to search for it in a few years' time. He had to find a way, so he thought for a while. Suddenly, his heart moved. He stimulated the dragon bloodline in his body, causing him to transform into a half-dragon body. All of a sudden, Suyu felt the air around him relax. It was as if the shackles on his body had been removed. As expected, Suyu murmured. The space around the dragon skeleton was sealed. It should be the will of the ancestral dragon left behind to prevent others from invading. Only the bloodline of the dragon could move freely. When he landed, there was no more dragon's breath on the ground. Taking a light breath, Suyu searched for that thing with his movement technique. 1 month later, he walked through most of the dragon's body and finally came to the area near the dragon's neck. A few days ago, the pearl in his arms began to heat up and emit a faint red light. So Suyu slowed down and searched around. At this moment, he was standing in front of a huge, bottomless pit. The pearl in his arms was emitting a dazzling red light. Obviously, it was very close to the thing that the third ancestor had mentioned. This should be the place where the ancestral dragon's heart is located, right? Looking at the huge pit that the man had created, Suyu felt like he was seeing the destruction of the previous era. The Saint Mountain Emperor had pierced through the ancestral dragon's back and destroyed his heart. Sighing softly, Suyu leaped into the pit. Could it be that the third ancestor had asked Suyu to find the dragon's heart? But the dragon's heart should have been destroyed by the Saint Mountain Emperor long ago. As he continued to enter the pit, Suyu felt the remnants of the world-destroying power in the deep pit. Even after an era, it still had not dissipated. The deeper he went, the more terrifying the world-destroying power became. When he reached the bottom, a broken dragon heart came into view. Within the dragon heart, the world-destroying power was everywhere. They were like living creatures, swimming around the broken dragon heart. Suyu's arrival alarmed them, and they all rushed over. His face changed, and he immediately took out the little worm on his shoulder. The little worm opened its mouth and sucked in, swallowing the world-destroying power that was attacking him. However, the little worm itself was exhausted. Suyu was secretly shocked. The insect ancestor had said that this worm could swallow all attacks that were not stronger than him. The behavior of the little worm was enough to show that the seemingly ordinary attacks just now were absolutely fatal. Swish! Swish! The world-destroying power here was innumerable. The few that were swallowed did not harm the root, but instead completely enraged the world-destroying power, which shot out like arrows. The little worm hurriedly opened its mouth and swallowed 10 of them in a row. Finally, it missed one, and it hit its waist. Puff! The little worm was immediately turned into ashes. Suyu's face changed. He took out the bone that the bone ancestor had given him and slapped it towards the world-destroying power that was attacking him, breaking it apart. However, a deep burn mark was left on the bone. Swish! Swish! More and more world-destroying power came, and it seemed that it would not stop until Suyu was destroyed. Suyu's heart was heavy. No wonder the third ancestor did not dare to come here easily. This place was really dangerous. Looking at the heart that was close at hand, and then looking at the world-destroying power that was surging towards him, Suyu gritted his teeth and shouted, "Space transfer." He used the space domain to replace the dragon heart with the space of the outside world. In an instant, the dragon heart appeared beside Suyu's hand. Without hesitation, he grabbed the palace-sized dragon heart and rushed out of the deep pit. The world-destroying power chased after him, and quickly caught up with Suyu, pouncing towards him like a violent storm. Suyu's face was solemn. He pulled out the royal dragon sword and swept it across. His original intention was to stop the world-destroying power. Unexpectedly, as soon as the sword was drawn, the whole body of the dragon began to shake. A dragon's breath that was tens of thousands of feet high emerged from the dragon's body, instantly swallowing everything on the dragon's body. The world-destroying might immediately disappeared without a trace. Only the 100 jong radius around Suyu was safe and sound. Suyu was startled. The ferocity of the dragon's breath just now was probably enough to severely injure or even kill one of the 3 ancestors. This was the real reason why they did not dare to step into the ancestral dragon's body. He stared at the royal dragon sword in his hand. It seemed like this sword had caused the ancestral dragon's remains to tremble. As an inherited treasure of the dragon clan, does the royal dragon sword have anything to do with the ancestral dragon? While he was deep in thought, the damaged dragon heart in his hand suddenly trembled violently before disintegrating inch by inch. Back then, it suffered a destructive attack, and after the Great Era passed, it was corroded by the world-destroying might, long reaching its limit. Now that it had been shaken, it was finally unable to maintain its form and collapsed. Suyu was stunned. Is this what the third ancestor wants? Since it was already destroyed, what was the use of it? However, Suyu quickly realized that something was amiss. What is that? Suyu asked. Among the shattered pieces on the ground, Suyu could faintly see an emerald color. With a wave of his sleeves, Suyu swept away the fragments, revealing the full appearance of the jade object. It was a pair of jade wings the size of a palm. The carvings were exquisite and lifelike. Suyu tried to pick it up. The pearl in his arms was emitting an unusually bright light, as if it was about to ignite. This was what the third ancestor wanted. When he touched it, Suyu was surprised to find that the jade wings were very soft and warm, similar to a human's body temperature. Holding in his hand, it was like holding a ball of fresh life. What is this thing? Suyu did not remember the dragon clan having wings. Moreover, the ancestral dragon had protected it in its most important part, the heart. Chapter 2349. The ancestral dragon had suffered a destructive attack, but he still hid this object deep in his heart to protect it. It was obvious that it was extraordinary. So you tried to instill the power of desolation into it to see if there would be a reaction. As a result, the power of desolation in Suyu's body evaporated into thin air, leaving nothing behind. Suyu was shocked. He immediately swallowed a mouthful of spiritual meat to replenish the power of desolation. Unexpectedly, the more he replenished, the more the power of desolation disappeared. It was as if there was a bottomless pit in his body, swallowing all the power of desolation. He blinked and stared at the emerald wing in his hand. It could only be this thing. Ordinary people might have been scared enough to throw it away, but Suyu did the opposite. Not only did he not throw it away, but he also gritted his teeth and kept taking out more resources, consuming them and transforming them into desolation. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, after a whole month, all the resources that Suyu had managed to scavenge in the human character realm were used up. However, the emerald wing did not change at all. It could devour all the power of desolation. Suyu had no more resources to convert. He pondered, looking at the emerald wing, and then looking up at the 3 majestic figures on the bridge. Since they captured me because of my dragon bloodline, does that mean that my bloodline can affect the emerald wing? Suyu's eyes flashed. He carefully sacrificed a drop of dragon blood and dripped it on the emerald wing. Suddenly, a very faint dragon-shaped mark appeared on the emerald wing, which had not changed for a long time. At the same time, a faintly discernible feeling appeared in Suyu's heart. Suyu had a feeling that he could control the emerald wing to fly away as long as he stuck it on his body. He prepared to sacrifice a drop of dragon blood again. But suddenly, he retracted his finger. The third ancestor was watching Suyu. If he really refined the emerald wing, he could imagine what would happen to him when he returned. He would probably be killed immediately, wouldn't he? Holding the emerald wing in his hand, Suyu stood where he was deep in thought. If he brought the emerald wing back and did as they instructed, would the third ancestor let him go? Even if the insect ancestor had promised to spare Suyu's life. However, would a person care about a promise to an ant? No. If they were in a good mood, they might let him go. If he was in a bad mood, he wouldn't. It's better for me to take control of my own fate. Suyu didn't place his hopes on them. After a long time, he came up with several feasible plans and left with the emerald wings. Perhaps it was because there was no more dragon blood dripping in, but the weak dragon mark dissipated without being noticed. At that time, on the bridge, the third ancestor stood tall and stared at the dragon skeleton from afar. More than a month has passed. Has he still lost in the end? Insect ancestor frowned, wasting one of my tribulation crossing insects. Snake ancestor's expression was similarly ugly. He said in a low voice, "It seems like he was unable to resist the eruption of the dragon breath a month ago because his dragon blood wasn't pure enough." A month ago, on the bridge, they clearly saw the entire dragon skeleton suddenly spew out dragon breath, burning its entire body. Under such circumstances, even they would be in danger, let alone Suyu. Only Ancestor Bone's expression was as calm as before. He said, "Wait patiently. The ancestral dragon is the most tolerant towards his descendants. He might not harm those with the dragon race bloodline." Just as expected, half a day later, a figure the size of sesame seed flew up from under the bridge. Insect ancestor and snake ancestor's pupils constricted. They were anxious as they stared at Suyu, who was getting closer and closer. When Suyu flew onto the bridge, He opened his palm and revealed the emerald wings. Snake ancestor and insect ancestor rushed forward and snatched the emerald wings. Because they used too much strength, Suyu was pushed away by them and smashed heavily on the pier of the bridge. Even his bones were broken and his insides were in turmoil. Suyu was in pain both physically and mentally. He silently used his vitality to recover his body. Looking at the excited and fanatical eyes of insect ancestor and snake ancestor as they held the emerald wings, Suyu completely extinguished the idea of entrusting his fate to them. He had risked his life to ascend the dragon skeleton. They had never cared about how many times he had narrowly escaped death in the past month. They had even disregarded Suyu's relatively weak body and forcefully snatched it away. How could people like them, who regarded him as an ant, have good intentions? The ancestral dragon's strange feathers are really still here. Our bitter wait for an era has finally paid off. Insect ancestor and snake ancestor were extremely excited. Bone ancestor also walked over and stared at the emerald wings. He said in a serious voice, "It is rumored that in the previous era, there were actually two ancestral dragons, one male and one female. Perhaps the Holy Mountain deliberately made the male ancestral dragon extremely powerful, but his lifespan was short, while the female ancestral dragon was weak, but her lifespan was endless. When the male ancestral dragon was about to die, the female ancestral dragon was reluctant to let him go. She resolutely cut off her own dragon heart and transplanted it into the male ancestral dragon's body. That was how the male ancestral dragon lived until the end of the era. The male ancestral dragon was sad, so he refined his heart into a pair of wings. He used his whole life to nourish it and refined it into the world's first pair of wings that could transcend life and death. He hoped that one day, in the new era, he could use this pair of wings to break through the barrier of life and death and find the female ancestral dragon again. However, it is a pity that the ancestral dragon did not survive until the new era. The ancestral dragon's strange feathers carved from the female ancestral dragon's heart were completely covered in dust. Suyu's heart was filled with sorrow when he heard this legend. The world was infinite, and there was love in the world. The long wait of an era ended with them being annihilated. No wonder the ancestral dragon's heart was so damaged, but this pair of wings was intact. Before dying, what the ancestral dragon wanted to protect the most was not his own life, but the hope that was heavier than life itself. He hoped that in the next life, in the new era, he could see his lover again. "Sigh, it is so touching," the bone ancestor said indifferently. "However, it is actually pedantic. If it was not to protect this heart, how could the ancestral dragon, one of the 9 great divine ancestors, be destroyed by the sacred mountain son of heaven so easily?" The insect ancestor was dismissive. There are millions of divine weapons in the world, and there are countless techniques. How can they be compared to the ruthlessness of love? The ancestral dragon is really not worth it. The snake ancestor shook his head and sighed. It is a pity that he does not even understand such a simple truth. We are the great masters of the world. Only by being heartless can we reach the end. Hearing their words, Suyu was extremely contemptuous. Living in the world, if there was only eternal life without fetters, what was the point of eternal life? So what if one lived through the eras again and again? In the end, they were walking corpses without souls. This ancestral dragon's strange feather has fallen into our hands. Let us shine again. This way, we will be worthy of the ancestral dragon's painstaking efforts for an era. The snake ancestor's contemptuous tone contained a hint of sarcasm. He waved his sleeves, and the clouds on the bridge dispersed, revealing the scenery on the other side. An incomparably tall furnace, like a mountain, stood on the plains. Under the furnace, the corpses of wild beasts were burning. Those wild beasts, without exception, were existences of the super-strong. However, at this moment, they could only be reduced to firewood. The third ancestor used some unknown method, and the wild beasts, like moths flying into a flame, threw themselves into the fire one after another, becoming a part of the raging flames. The furnace was burned red, and the wine-red liquid inside was constantly bubbling. Let's begin. The third ancestor flew above the furnace and stared at the wine-red liquid inside. The insect ancestor held the ancestral dragon's strange feather inside. We, the third ancestor, have dripped a drop of our ancestral blood into it every day for an entire era, just to wait for this day. If they wanted to control the ancestral dragon's strange feather and fly out of this glazed ancient cave, they could only rely on their ancestral blood to irrigate it. Because the ancestral dragon's strange feather had gone through an era of the ancestral dragon, the strength of the third ancestor was far inferior to the ancestral dragon. Only by joining forces and using the ancestral blood of the three of them, and the spiritual liquid that had been fused for a long time, could they possibly control the ancestral dragon's strange feather. For this, they had sacrificed too much. Every day, they continuously gave their ancestral blood, but they were trapped here with no way to replenish it. Year after year, day after day, their strength did not increase, but instead declined, and they were far from their heyday. Because of this, they could not afford to make any mistakes. This time, they had to succeed. Begin. The insect ancestor threw the ancestral dragon's strange feather into the furnace. All of a sudden, the entire furnace began to turn upside down, and countless spiritual liquid rushed out of the furnace. It turned out that the ancestral dragon's strange feather was resisting fiercely, trying to break free from the furnace. "Junior, come here." The snake ancestor's eyes turned sharp, and he pulled Suyu over from afar, saying, "Lend me your dragon blood." Without waiting for Suyu to resist, he slapped his palm on Suyu's back, causing Suyu to spit out a mouthful of blood mist. The blood mist condensed in the air, and the human's blood was removed, while the remaining dragon's blood condensed together and dripped onto the ancestral dragon's strange feather. All of a sudden, the ancestral dragon's strange feather quietened down, and it was slowly eroded by the third ancestor's ancestral blood. Just like that, a day later, the ancestral dragon's strange feather resisted uneasily again. The snake ancestor slapped Suyu's chest again, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood, which sprayed onto the ancestral dragon's strange feather. After being watered by the dragon's blood, the ancestral dragon's strange feather calmed down again. The snake ancestor's nervous face eased slowly, and he laughed. As expected, the blood of our third ancestor isn't enough to refine the ancestral dragon's strange feather. It must be appeased by the blood of the dragon clan. The bone ancestor and the insect ancestor heaved a long sigh of relief. Finally, everything went smoothly. However, they did not notice that Suyu, who was ignored by them, had lowered his head, and his eyes were filled with deep coldness. He wiped the blood that had yet to dry at the corner of his mouth, and said coldly in his heart, "The blood of an era? Fine, I'll make you lose everything." They completely regarded Suyu as a blood bag, and when needed, they would hit him with a palm, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. If they were not worried that taking out the dragon's blood from Suyu's body would affect the effects of the dragon's blood, they would have sucked Suyu dry and turned him into a piece of human skin. Since they were heartless, Suyu would certainly not be righteous. Time passed slowly. Every day, Suyu would be hit by the snake ancestor's palm, causing him to spit out a mouthful of dragon's blood. Suyu endured silently, waiting for the right time. A year later, everything was on the right track, and the third ancestor's heart seemed to be at ease. They did not keep a strict watch on Suyu anymore. As long as Suyu voluntarily handed over a drop of dragon's blood, he would be free to move around on the bridge. Chapter 2350. Suyu did not choose to escape. If he could escape from the third ancestor, he would not have been caught. After sacrificing a drop of fresh dragon blood every day, Suyu would train in the center of the bridge. The unique aura here was extremely dense. Even though he himself had no use for it, he could accumulate it and leave it for the little Qilin, or use it after he broke through to the Downlord realm. The third patriarch was fully focused on the refinement of the ancestral dragon's strange feather, so he was not in the mood to cultivate. They had no use for these special scents at the moment. Seeing that Suyu had taken all of them away, the third ancestor did not stop him, even though he was dissatisfied. Time passed slowly. Year after year passed. The cauldron steamed every day, and the spirit liquid inside gradually merged into the ancestral dragon's strange feather. In the beginning, it needed a drop of dragon blood a day to appease the ancestral dragon's strange feather. Now, it only needed a drop every 7 to 8 days. It was clear that the ancestral dragon's strange feather was no longer so resistant to the blood of the three ancestors. This indirectly showed that they were already able to control the ancestral dragon's strange feathers. They just needed to absorb all the ancestral blood, and the ancestral dragon feathers would be theirs. 5 years passed slowly. The exit of the glazed ancient cave finally closed due to lack of energy. Outside the entrance, Xiao Lifeng was waiting at the Radiant Jade. Xianhua, Xie Xiaoya, Xianyin, and Kong Chu walked out of a winding passageway. Then, it was Seeking Sword Pavilion's Hunting Shadow and Ghost Eye. Finally, the bamboo-hatted man, Biyunhong Xian, and Princess Qianyu appeared. Qianyue. Xiao Lifeng was filled with anticipation as he welcomed her. He had agreed to open the glazed ancient cave together with the other two great forces, and his biggest hope was on Princess Qianyu. Hopefully, he would be able to temper himself in the glazed ancient cave and become a powerful Tao Lord. But when Princess Qianyue appeared, Xiao Yifeng's heart was filled with disappointment. Over the past 5 years, Princess Qianyue had made no progress other than the pure, desolate force in her body. Could it be that she had not been baptized by the glazed ancient platform? Father, Princess Qianyue was crestfallen. She had thought that following the man in bamboo would allow her to obtain a great fortune and amaze the world with a single feat. Who knew that Ghost Master would appear and destroy all her hopes? It was such a precious opportunity to enter the glazed ancient cave, but she almost didn't get anything. What happened inside? Xiao Lifeng asked. This shouldn't be the case. No matter how weak Princess Qianyu was, she shouldn't have left empty-handed. Princess Qianyu said in an aggrieved tone. The human-tier ancient glaze platform was completely destroyed, and the earth-tier ancient glaze platform was taken by the people of the Sword Seek Pavilion, so I didn't get anything. The flames of rage in Xiao Yifeng's heart surged when he heard this, and he glared angrily at Hunting Shadow and Ghost Eye. However, he discovered that the two of them had not improved at all. Imperial Father, there's no need to look anymore. All of us who went in this time have returned empty-handed, Princess Qianyu said, feeling much better. Anyway, no one benefited from it, so she wasn't embarrassed. Xianhua, you've broken through to the fish dragon realm. However, Radiant Jade cried out with pleasant surprise, and it caused Xiao Yifeng's heart to tremble greatly. He glanced over. Wasn't that right? Presently, the surface of Xianhua's body was faintly coiled with profound airflow, and it formed a faintly discernible pattern. It was the symbol of the fish dragon realm's Tao Lord. No, it wasn't just Xianhua. Xie Xiaoya, Xianyin, and Kong Chu had all broken through to the fish dragon realm. In the human realm, the probability of breaking through to the Tao Lord realm was less than 50%. The cultivation of the four of them had previously been at the level of family masters, and now they had all broken through to the fish dragon realm. Wasn't their luck too nature-defying? Xiao Lifeng was filled with jealousy, but he realized that something was amiss. He walked over and asked Xie Xiaoya, why did the four of you break through, but why did my daughter not gain anything? He couldn't understand. Princess Qianyu was with them, so why didn't Princess Qianyu get anything? Xianhua and Xianyin glanced at Princess Qianyu indifferently. As the Nightless Empire and the Palace of Light were still allies, they couldn't say it out loud. However, Xie Xiaoya didn't hesitate. She sneered coldly. Why? Because your precious princess daughter didn't want to be with us and left alone. Oh, now it seems like she didn't like us and chose to leave with the man in the bamboo hat. You can't blame us for that. What? Xiao Lifeng turned to glare at Princess Qianyu, his eyes filled with great anger. Qianyu, what's going on? Before he left, he had clearly instructed her to listen to Su Yu's arrangements after entering the glaze ancient cave. She had actually left with the man in the bamboo hat. In the end, She didn't get any benefits, and even lost a great opportunity for nothing. Princess Qianyu felt as if something was pressing down on her chest. She said in disbelief, "They're talking nonsense." The glazed ancient platform of the human realm had clearly stopped working. How could it have allowed them to break through to the Pathmaster level? At this moment, even Xianhua couldn't stand it anymore. She said calmly, "Princess Qianyu, just take it that we had other gains." Princess Qianyu's chest heaved up and down. She couldn't calm down. She could have gotten a share of the loot, but she had trusted the man in the bamboo hat and gone to the Earth realm without gaining anything. However, the original team that she had abandoned had a great harvest. How could she remain calm? It was Suyu. He deliberately angered me and made me leave, didn't he? People were always unwilling to admit their own mistakes, especially the self-centered Princess Qianyu. She threw all the blame onto Suyu, thinking that he had maliciously framed her. Xianhua frowned slightly. "Princess Qianyu, please watch your words. You were the one who insisted on leaving. How can you blame Suyu?" She felt that Princess Qianyu was unreasonable. She was forcing her own mistakes onto Suyu. "Father, Suyu is not a good person. You have to believe me," Princess Qianyu said pitifully. Slap. This time, Xiao Lifeng couldn't take it anymore. He slapped Princess Qianyu, his eyes filled with indescribable disappointment. "You disappoint me." He was very clear about his daughter's personality and temperament. She could imagine what had happened just by hearing Xianhua's words. Gang Bin's selfish daughter must have looked down on Suyu and abandoned him to follow the man in the bamboo hat whom she had just met. She would rather believe a stranger than Suyu, who had taught her for half a year. This caused her to lose her only chance to break through to the Pathmaster level. Xiao Lifeng felt like he had aged 1,000 years in an instant. Some people in this world were like mud that couldn't be saved no matter how hard they tried. They weren't as capable as others, and even their brains weren't good enough. "Father, you hit me?" Princess Qianyu couldn't believe it. Her father, who had never hit her before, had hit her for an outsider. Xiao Yefeng's eyes were hollow as he said wearily, "Go back to the palace and face the wall for 100 years until you become enlightened." Princess Qianyu couldn't help but protest angrily as she ordered her men to take her away. Xiao Lifeng looked at the Palace of Light, which was full of gains, and felt a stabbing pain in his heart. Heaven's will. Even with Suyu's help, he couldn't stop his daughter from being useless. Guangmingyu examined Xianhua, Xianyin, and Kongchu's bodies and confirmed that their cultivation levels were stable. He was thrilled and delighted. "What happened? All of you broke through." Xianhua had the most right to speak. "When we went there, the ancient glazed platform had indeed stopped working. It seemed like Suyu had done something there that caused it to emit a special gas that was as heavy as the word Earth. That was how we managed to break through to the Pathmaster level after 5 years of training." "Suyu?" Guangmingyu was surprised, but he felt that it was reasonable. This human really had the ability to turn something rotten into something magical. Hearing that it was Suyu who had done it, Xiao Yefeng's heart became even more depressed. Suyu was obviously his man, but in the end, the benefits that Suyu had created were all reaped by the Palace of Light. He laughed at himself, lost for a moment, and asked, "What about Suyu? Where is he?" He was completely disappointed in Princess Qianyu and no longer held any hope. Instead, he pinned his hopes on Suyu. If Suyu could represent the Nightless Empire, that would be great. If the four of them could reap such great benefits, surely Suyu's benefits would be even greater? But Xianhua shook her head. "Suyu left after settling us down. Is he not back yet?" Xiesia's heart tightened, and she looked around frantically. At that moment, the sound of hooves could be heard from within the passageway. Wu Xintai Constable rode out on his gold and silver horse, his eyes dim. "There's no need to wait. Suyu is not coming back." She had a bad feeling about the destruction of the word human. Now that 5 years had passed, and there was no sign of Suyu's return, his fate was clear. Holding the 9 jade spiritual pearl in his hand, Wu Xintai Constable's chest was filled with depression and grief. Everyone was silent. Guangmingyu sighed softly, not suspecting anything. The ancient glaze cave was a perilous place. It was normal for Su Yu to die there. Xiao Liefeng's body swayed. He had escaped the Yuan level domain with great difficulty, but in the end, he still couldn't escape death. His heart was filled with despair, but he quickly came back to his senses. Even if he lost Su Yu, he still had Xie, Xiaoya, and Wu Xintai Constable to represent the sleepless empire. Wu Xintai Constable, do you still remember our agreement? Xiao Liefeng said. Back then, he had asked Wu Xintai Constable to represent the sleepless empire to participate in the 8-star civilization assessment, in exchange for a chance to enter the ancient glaze cave. I remember, but I can't fulfill it for now. Wu Xintai Constable looked up at the horizon, his heart filled with melancholy. I want to find someone for Su Yu and obtain something. If I complete it, I will continue to participate in the assessment on your behalf. After saying that, he galloped off on his horse, stepping into the vast, starry sky. Xie Xiaoya's eyes were resolute. Without seeing it with her own eyes, she would never believe that Su Yu had really died. I want to wait here. Xie Xiaoya sat cross-legged, staring at the entrance of the ancient glaze cave. She believed that Su Yu would return, just like how he could return alive under the Yuan level domain. Among everyone, only one person was in a good mood. It was the man in the bamboo hat. Haha, it's good that he died. Saves me the trouble of doing it myself. The man in the bamboo hat murmured softly. His eyes looked in the direction where Princess Qianyue had left, and he laughed coldly. However, I can make use of that stupid princess. The ancient glaze cave swept across the colored glaze civilization in a shocking manner. Overnight, the colored glaze civilization gained 4 strong men of the fish dragon realm, 3 of whom were heaven rulers. With a few of them participating in the assessment, their chances of qualifying would be greatly increased. The entire colored glaze civilization was in a great celebration. Compared to the excitement of the entire civilization, Su Yu was silently enduring the pain of dripping blood. But this was the last drop of blood. 5 years had passed, and the refinement had reached its final moment. Chapter 2351. There was only clear water left in the cauldron. The ancestral dragon Strange Feather had completely absorbed the blood of the 3 ancestors that had fused into it. The ancestor dragon Strange Feather no longer resisted and lay motionlessly in the cauldron. I've finally succeeded. Insect Ancestor looked up at the sky and sighed. The weight of an epic has finally not been in vain. Snake Ancestor was so excited that he could hardly contain himself. The heavens didn't let me down. Open, lead us to break the seal and return to the world. Ancestor Bone took a deep breath, and his eyes became sharp. Ancestor Lu, your doomsday is here. The 3 progenitors acted in unison, capturing the ancestral dragon Strange Feather together. The ancestral dragon Strange Feather was exceptionally obedient and had no intention of resisting. As such, the 3 of them were completely at ease, and they channeled their unparalleled mighty power into it together. The strange feathers of the ancestral dragon began to tremble, and the surface of the jade emitted a gentle green light. Wherever the green light passed, space flowed like flowing water. Yin and yang, life and death, and time were all changing. Even the sky above the character heaven was changing in layers. Ancestral dragon wings, activate. The 3rd forefather shouted, and the ancestral dragon wings were fully activated. It suddenly grew 100 times larger, becoming a pair of jade wings that were 30 meters wide. The 3 ancestors turned around and came under the wings at the same time. In the next moment, as long as they continued to activate it, they would be able to use the most powerful wings of the last great era to break through the glazed ancient cave seal, descend into the western region, descend into this great era, descend into the heads of all living beings. I'm finally going to break free. Snake Ancestor revealed an excited look. The insect ancestor nodded. Suddenly, he glanced at Su Yu, who was on the bridge, and said indifferently, "How should we deal with this ant?" They had already squeezed out all of the dragon clan's blood from Su Yu's body and made use of him, but they still had no intention of letting him go. Ancestor Bone said indifferently, To be able to personally witness the birth of the ancestral dragon's wings is already a great opportunity that we have bestowed upon him. Even if he dies, he will have no regrets. When Suyu heard this, he laughed silently. After 5 years of trials and tribulations, they extracted a drop of his dragon blood every day to help them refine the ancestral dragon's feathers. However, in their eyes, this was a great favor to Suyu. Ridiculous, hateful, disgusting. Insect ancestor nodded. I understand. It looked at Suyu, its eyes full of arrogance. It was like a god above the 9 heavens, looking down at the ants crawling on the ground. You have no regrets after seeing us 3 ancient ancestors with your own eyes, right? Since that's the case, I'll send you on your way. Dying in the hands of an insect ancestor is also a blessing that you have cultivated for 9 lifetimes. Killing Suyu and saying that it was Suyu's good fortune for several lifetimes. Suyu's smile became more and more profound, to the point that it made people's hair stand on end. Insect ancestor said indifferently, Ant, what are you laughing at? He felt that something was wrong, but he did not take it to heart. Could an ant overturn the heavens? I'm laughing at you for thinking too highly of yourselves and belittling me. Suyu laughed heartily. Insect ancestor was indifferent. Isn't that the case? A mere ant wants to be mentioned in the same breath as his peerless overlords? As he spoke, he extended a finger and said indifferently, Dying in my hands, consider yourself lucky. Just as he was about to strike, Suyu laughed loudly. In my life, I have met many beings who thought they were superior, but in the end, they all fell, and I was the only one left standing, trampling them under my feet. You so-called primordial ancestors are no exception. Staring at the 3 of them, Suyu's eyes were full of hatred. In the past 5 years, you hit me with a palm every day, took a drop of my blood every day, and I remember it all. Today, I will give you a gift, and I will return it all. The 3 ancestors' faces were indifferent, as if they were looking at an ant, crazily cursing the gods above the 9 heavens. That hysterical, weak, and incompetent roar, that pathetic and ridiculous madness in their eyes, they did not even have the mood to laugh. After all, who would care about the anger of an ant? Lunatic. Insect ancestor raised his finger, preparing to crush Suyu. However, at this moment, the strange feathers of the ancestral dragon, which had been refined by them with the blood of an era, suddenly flapped violently without warning. Under the flapping of the wings, a weak whirlwind was set off. The whirlwind rose, yin and yang flowed in reverse, and life and death became chaotic. The 3 ancestors were caught off guard, and they were all sent flying. Among them, insect ancestor's extended finger was cut off amidst the chaotic life and death. Snake ancestor was attacked by a chaotic yin and yang flow, and his body swelled and shrank, as if he was about to be destroyed. Even bone ancestor's body flickered uncontrollably in all directions. What happened? The strange feathers of the ancestral dragon are out of control. Insect ancestor covered his broken finger and said in surprise. Bone ancestor stared at the strange feathers of the ancestral dragon and found that there was a faint dragon mark on it. Someone refined it in advance. Bone ancestor turned his head and stared at Suyu coldly. You dare to deceive us? Snake ancestor was also extremely resentful, but he could not believe it. Impossible. Even if he dripped his own dragon blood in advance, how could it defeat the ancestral blood of our 3 ancestors? Even if Suyu really refined in advance, it would have long been destroyed by the impact of the ancestral blood. Suyu only had the blood of a half-dragon, and it was impossible to resist the invasion of the blood of the 3 ancestors. Suyu stood up. Due to the prolonged blood loss, his face was sickly pale. But at this moment, his pale face was filled with contempt. Because I have blood that surpasses all of you. As it turned out, before he returned with the ancestral dragon, Strange Feather, it tried to infuse all the blood in the divine 9-dragon cauldron into the ancestral dragon feather. The blood in the cauldron was the blood of ancient god 9-dragon. In a previous era, there were 9 of the most powerful sacred ancestors. In this era, there were 8 ancient gods. the realms of Ancestor Bone, and the other two were definitely far inferior to the sacred ancestor and were naturally inferior to the 8 great ancient gods of this era. Hence, the strange feathers of the ancestral dragon had been quietly refined by Suyu when they were under the bridge. He already had it in his hands. However, the ancestral dragon's strange feather seemed to have not been activated yet. It needed more power to awaken it. Therefore, Suyu remained calm and collected. He silently endured the snake ancestor's palm strike every day. He silently sacrificed a drop of dragon blood in order to get the third ancestor to obediently contribute all of her accumulation for an era. 5 years passed. The ancestral blood accumulated by the 3 ancestors was finally completely absorbed by the ancestral dragon's strange feather and could be used. At this time, what was Suyu hesitating about? The accumulation of an entire era had all become Suyu's wedding dress. Evil creature. The insect ancestor's indifferent face was filled with anger. He was like a high and mighty deity who was deceived by an ant. It was unforgivable. Die. Suyu coldly snorted. Strange feathers of the ancestral dragon. With a command, the ancestral dragon's strange feather appeared behind Suyu with a swoosh. Then, with a fan, it stirred the seal above Suyu's head, broke a gap, and flew out in an instant. Ah! Stop! The insect ancestor was shocked and hurriedly chased after them. The bone ancestor and the snake ancestor's faces also changed greatly. They hurriedly chased after them, hoping to catch up to the gap. However, not long after they flew into the sky, countless thunderbolts rumbled down. Each of them was comparable to the Yuan realm, and they fiercely struck the 3 of them from the sky. As a result, they watched the gap heal before their eyes. Before it healed, Suyu's extremely cold voice came from outside. Thank you for the ancestral blood. I will repay this kindness in the future. Suyu would never forgive what the 3 of them had done. One day, he would make them pay a heavier price. Little B asterisk starred. The snake ancestor let out an earth-shattering roar, and the entire Glaze ancient cave trembled violently. Within the heavenly character, because of this hysterical roar, everything was shattered into chaos, leaving only a river, a bridge, and a golden lotus throne of evil crossing. The bone ancestor was also filled with hatred. I was actually played by a little ant. The ancestral blood in the furnace was the crystallization of the 3 of them dripping it day and night. It had been brewed for an era. In the end, it all benefited that ant. Not only did they not get the ancestral dragon's strange feather, but they also helped Suyu activate it. Thinking of this, they were so angry that their chests were about to explode. How could a deity tolerate being deceived by an ant? At the same time, outside the Glaze civilization, in the depths of the universe, an old man in a Taoist robe walked in the void with his hands behind his back. Suddenly, he seemed to sense something and looked in the direction of the Glaze civilization. His indifferent face quickly turned serious. Those 3 guys are going to break out of isolation? After a long time, his tone became heavier. The end of the world has come, and the West region will never be peaceful. When Suyu broke out of the Glaze ancient cave, he found that he was already far away from the Glaze civilization. The ancestral dragon's strange feather is really nature-defying, Suyu exclaimed. With just a gentle flash, he had taken him across the star region. With such speed, those super strong men, even if they were 10,000 times faster, were far inferior. At the same time, Suyu's body was surrounded by lingering chaotic yin and yang, as well as chaotic life and death auras. They formed blurred waves of light, appearing on the surface of his body. These were all caused by the flap of the ancestral dragon wings just now. As soon as Suyu retracted his wings, these things would disappear. Just as he was about to make a move, suddenly, the aura of a super strong man descended. Moreover, the aura was very familiar. Looking up, Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that he had just escaped from a wolf's den into a tiger's mouth? It was none other than the purple flame demonic woman. She had the cultivation of the fish dragon realm. Suyu had lost most of his dragon blood, and the power of his heavenly dragon body was far from what it used to be. He had used up the 9-5 Heaven's Frost Needles and the Yuan level realm. How could he deal with her? However, what happened next surprised Suyu a little. The purple flame demonic woman stared at the yin and yang and the reverse flow of life and death on the surface of Suyu's body in awe. Fear rose in her heart. Greetings, Senior. Senior, you have come to the Starfire civilization. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. Suyu was stunned for a moment. She was frightened by the vision brought about by the ancestral dragon's strange feather. Whether it was the chaotic yin and yang or the chaotic life and death, it was incomparably shocking. The purple flame demonic woman probably mistook Suyu for some ancient, powerful man. Turning his eyes, Suyu pretended to sound ancient and magnificent. "And who are you?" "Aunt." Not only did the purple flame demonic woman not feel insulted, but she became even more cautious. This was because she had the honor of meeting a mysterious, ancient, powerful man. It was said that he came from the previous era. Chapter 2352. The purple flame demoness said cautiously, "This junior is the Starfire civilization's purple flame demoness. Greetings, Senior." Suyu was secretly surprised. He had accidentally come to the Starfire civilization from the Colored Glaze civilization. The distance between the two civilizations was so vast that even super experts would need several years to travel. In the blink of an eye, they had traversed such a long distance. The might of the strange feather of the ancestral dragon was truly astounding. No wonder it was known as the #1 flying magic treasure in the previous era. "Senior, what can I do for you?" the purple flame demoness asked. Suyu stared at her deeply and said indifferently, "Aunt, I am looking for the divine throne of heaven and earth. Do you know where it is?" The purple flame demoness didn't doubt it at all. Instead, she felt that it was precisely because of this that an unfathomable and peerless almighty had appeared out of nowhere. It was because of the appearance of the heavenly throne of heaven and earth that it was drawn out. "Senior, we are also looking for the heavenly throne of heaven and earth." After a pause, the purple flame devilish woman cautiously said, "Senior, if you trust us, why don't you stay in the Starfire civilization for the time being? We'll do our best to gather intelligence, and we'll inform you of anything we find." Suyu wanted to refuse, but the strange feather of the ancestral dragon had absorbed too much of the third ancestor's blood, and it needed to be dealt with urgently. Otherwise, it could easily become a hidden danger. "Lead the way." Suyu wore a look of reluctance as he gave him face. The purple flame devilish woman was overjoyed. It would be greatly beneficial to the development of the Starfire civilization if she could establish a relationship with such a peerless almighty being. It might even become a life-saving card for the Starfire civilization. Under his guidance, Suyu arrived at the core region of the Starfire civilization, Sacred Flame City. The 4 evil women lived in this city. At this moment, apart from the elusive divine flame demoness who was still in seclusion, the other 2 demonesses had received the purple flame demoness notice in advance and were waiting at the top of Saint Flame City to welcome them. They led a group of prodigies in the city and respectfully welcomed him. "Welcome to the Starfire civilization, Senior." Suyu indifferently swept his gaze over the people, including the 2 of them, and calmly said, "Too weak. It's hard for you to achieve anything great." The 2 evil women were embarrassed, but they didn't dare to retort. Just now, a terrifying force had brushed past the Starfire civilization. As a result, the operation of the entire civilization was in chaos. On the civilization, all the beasts prostrated themselves on the ground, worshipping the depths of the universe. It was as if a sacred ancestor had arrived to inform them of the arrival of their arrival, causing them to feel a sense of fear from the depths of their bloodline. At the same time, the civilization shook and the weather changed. Even the atmosphere changed drastically, causing everyone to be forced to stop cultivating. As the strongest experts of the Starfire civilization, the 3 evil women could feel it even more clearly. It gave them the feeling that there was a terrifying existence in the sky that was stepping on the Spark civilization, making it hard for them to breathe. Hence, the purple flame demoness mustered up her courage and went to investigate, only to find Su Yu. In fact, it was the ancestral dragon, Strange Feather, who exuded such a deterrent force. Not only was it the heart of the female ancestral dragon, but it had also been infused with the blood of the 3 ancestral dragons. All beasts would feel fear. However, they had misunderstood Su Yu's actions. Su Yu simply put on a tiger's skin and swaggered around in the Starfire civilization to deceive them. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior," the purple flame demoness replied awkwardly. "This way, please, Senior." Under their respectful escort, Su Yu arrived at the most solemn and sacred holy palace in Sacred Flame City. Su Yu sat alone in the highest seat of honor, overlooking the many supreme experts of the Starfire civilization who were standing upright. It was as if he was the master of the Starfire civilization. "Give me information about the heavenly divine throne in 3 days," Su Yu ordered. His tone did not have the slightest intention of asking for help, and it seemed rude and overbearing. However, the more he did so, the more they were in awe of him. This was the ultimate almighty. Every word and action was incomparably ostentatious. "Yes," the purple flame demoness and the other 2 evil women replied. The purple flame demoness clapped her hands, and an exceptionally beautiful and young woman with a hot look appeared. She held a crystal with hundreds of superimposed seals in her hands. The woman was Lu Yi, a peerless beauty of a younger generation of the Starfire civilization who was known as the Flame Fairy. Now, she was submissively presenting the item. It was obvious that she was trying to please Su Yu. Moreover, the item in her hands was no trivial matter. As soon as the item appeared, the group of geniuses swallowed hard. That was the Holy Flame Guild, which was unique to the Starfire civilization. The marvelous Holy Flame contained in it, once integrated into the body of the Pathmaster, could enhance his cultivation. Usually, they could only get a piece the size of a fingernail, but the one in front of them was the size of a goose egg, which was more than what the geniuses in the past 100 years had gotten. Such a large amount of Holy Flame Gold, if given to any one of them, could help them break through the realm of at least 2 Pathmasters, and they might even become super strong individuals. Not only were the young people jealous, but even the 3 evil women were extremely distressed. In the Starfire civilization, this was the only good thing that they could offer. "Elder, please accept it." Lu Yi presented the Holy Flame Gold in a charming manner. Su Yu's expression was indifferent. He glanced at the Holy Flame Gold and said, "You weak civilizations always like to please me with things that you think are precious, but in my eyes, these things are worthless." Everyone had mixed feelings. The unparalleled divine item that they had been trying their best to get their hands on was worthless in the eyes of the almighty beings of the world. However, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. It was better that the elder didn't like it. They could still use it for themselves. Unexpectedly, Su Yu said, "However, for the sake of your filial piety, I will give you face and accept it reluctantly." He lifted a finger and activated the space realm, and the Holy Flame Gold fell into his palm silently. Space realm. The 3 evil women and the many young talents gasped. One of the legendary supreme 8 great realms, the space realm. This was a realm that could not be condensed. Everyone was shocked. As expected of a peerless hero, he had mastered the space realm. They were even more in awe of him. "I never take advantage of people. Since I have accepted your broken stone, I will naturally give you the benefits you deserve," Su Yu said calmly. Everyone was delighted and secretly guessed what Su Yu was going to give them. Would it be divine elixirs? Or divine cultivation techniques? The 3 evil women were also full of expectations, and they pricked up their ears to listen to what Su Yu was going to say next. "You're practicing fire cultivation techniques, right? Then I will teach you the language of the 3rd-rate race, the Li Hua tribe. How much you can master depends on your own luck," Su Yu said. Hearing this, the young people were extremely disappointed. What was the use of passing on the language to them? It could not be used as a cultivation technique. However, the pupils of the 3 evil women shrank, and they knelt down and kowtowed on the ground. "Thank you, Senior. Thank you for your great kindness." At their level, they would more or less master some secret techniques passed down from first-rate civilizations. Among the first-rate civilizations, there was a famous fire race that was born good at fire cultivation. They were called the Li Hua tribe. Over the years, the sacred palace had more or less obtained some of the secret techniques of the Li Hua tribe. However, the language of the Li Hua tribe was abnormally jerky, so it was useless for them to obtain it. For many years, they had tried to decipher the language of the Li Hua tribe, but to no avail. The powerful being in front of them casually said that he would pass on the language of the Li Hua tribe. How could they not be excited? However, in addition to their excitement, they could not help but feel nervous. The language of the Li Hua tribe had never been passed on to outsiders. If the senior in front of them was not a member of the Li Hua tribe, how could he be proficient in it? Watch carefully. Suyu had mastered the language of the heavenly book. He immediately wrote thousands of words in the air with his fingers and personally passed on the pronunciation and meaning of the words. The three evil women were like students. They knelt on the ground and used the photographic crystal to memorize everything without missing a single word. Do you understand now? Suyu said calmly as he retracted his fingers. The purple flame demonic woman kowtowed repeatedly. Thank you, Senior, for your kindness. However, we are not qualified enough to comprehend 1% of it. Sai, you're just a bunch of ants. I'm asking too much. Suyu seemed very disappointed. He had spent countless years comprehending these things himself. It had taken him at least 10 years to comprehend the language of the Li Hua tribe. Right now, the purple flame demonic woman had comprehended 1% of the language in a short period of time. She was much more perceptive than Suyu. However, she had been looked down upon by Suyu. Suyu felt embarrassed and ashamed. However, he had to try his best to imitate those supremes so that he would not reveal any flaws. As expected, the purple flame demonic woman was ashamed and in awe. Senior, you are right. We will work hard to comprehend after we go down. We will not let you down. All right, I'm going to rest. All of you can leave now. The purple flame demonic woman and the others did not dare to stay. They dragged Lu Yi, who was trying to please him, away. When Suyu was left alone, his tense heart finally relaxed. For the past 5 years, he had been tense all the time, not daring to relax for even a moment. Now, he finally had the chance to rest. Heaving a sigh of relief, Suyu closed his eyes to rest. Perhaps because he was too tired, he fell asleep unknowingly. He slept for 2 days and 2 nights before he was awakened by a strange noise. He looked around and saw that the bizarre feathers of the ancestral dragon behind him had started to shrink. What is going on? Suyu examined it and was shocked to find that more than half of the third ancestor's blood in the bizarre feathers of the ancestral dragon had melted. Moreover, it was melting at an even faster speed. With the disappearance of the third ancestor's blood, the bizarre feathers of the ancestral dragon also gradually shrunk back to its original, unactivated state. It can't be. The third ancestor's accumulation of the ancestral dragon's blood only lasted for 2 to 3 days? Suyu exclaimed in shock. However, when he thought about it carefully, the bizarre feathers of the ancestral dragon were the heart of the ancestral dragon. The amount of energy needed to maintain its activated state was enormous. The third ancestor's blood was weak compared to the ancestral dragon's heart. It was already impressive that it could barely maintain it for 3 days. Presumably, the third ancestor did not intend to use the bizarre feathers of the ancestral dragon all the time. She only intended to use its power to break through the layer of seal. Looking at the wings that had finally shrunk to the size of a palm, Suyu could not help but feel disappointed. If he wanted to activate it next time, he would have to get his hands on the ancestral blood. But where could he find the ancestral blood? Putting it away, Suyu narrowed his eyes slightly. Without the pressure and unusual phenomenon produced by the bizarre feathers of the ancestral dragon, how could he continue acting as the almighty being? Chapter 2353. After pondering for a moment, Suyu took out a severed finger. This was severed from insect ancestor's hand when ancestral dragon's strange feather ambushed him. When Suyu left, the strange feather of the ancestral dragon swept it along with him, and it fell into Suyu's hands. After a brief inspection, so you found that there were about 10 drops of pure insect ancestor blood in it. The blood in a living being's body was divided into pure and thin ones. There was only so much pure blood. Every drop that was used was one drop less. Insect ancestor had lived through an epoch and dripped a drop of his blood into the cauldron every single day. So where would he find so much pure blood to drip? What he dripped was thin blood that flowed under the skin and could be discharged from the body at any time. The essence it contained was not even a millionth of a drop of pure ancestral blood. Each of the 10 drops of blood in his finger should be able to activate the ancestral dragon's strange feathers for an instant. After experiencing it for himself, Suyu realized that the ancestral dragon's strange feathers' offensive power and flying ability were unparalleled, even if it was only for a moment. His heart relaxed a little. At least he didn't end up empty-handed. In the future, he could still use the ancestral dragon's strange feathers about 10 times, until he found new ancestral blood. However, ancestral blood was too intelligent. Suyu clenched his fingers at the moment and could clearly feel the ancestral blood's resistance. What was even stranger was that one of the drops of ancestral blood was currently undergoing strange changes within the finger. From a drop of blood, it was gradually evolving into a living creature. That living being vaguely had the aura of insect ancestor. Rebirth from a single drop of blood. Suyu's gaze became ice cold. The ancestral blood was so powerful that it could transform into an incomparably powerful creature. It might not be as powerful as the true ancestral blood, but it was definitely not weak. You want to transform into a living being? That depends on whether I agree or not. With a wave of his left hand, the divine nine-dragon Cauldron appeared in his palm. Currently, the divine nine-dragon Cauldron was completely empty. It was all used to refine the ancestral dragon's feathers. Suppress. He used the mortal life cauldron technique that Ranzu taught him to control the divine nine-dragon Cauldron, suppressing the 10 drops of ancestral blood along with the finger. However, the current Suyu was not in the state of the holy mortal body, so he could not use the suppression technique to its fullest. That finger felt the suppression of the divine nine-dragon Cauldron and resisted, smashing the cauldron with a loud bang. Suyu had no choice but to continue activating the suppression technique in order to obliterate his resistance. At that time, deep within the sacred palace, in the depths of a certain lava lake that had been burning for eternity, in the lava, a coffin was inserted into the face. The purple flame demoness and the other 2 demonesses were waiting respectfully before the coffin. Creak! The lid of the coffin slowly opened, and an incomparably hot stream of air rolled out. The purple flame demoness expression changed slightly as she hurriedly retreated. The other 2 evil women also kept on distancing themselves. They were especially wary of the airflow. We greet the divine flame evil women. The 3 evil women stood in the distance and bowed. The 4 of them were all the 4 great demonesses of the Starfire civilization. However, they knew very well that they were only the background of the divine flame demonesses. In terms of strength, all of them combined could not even compare to a single finger of the divine flame demoness. It seems to be very lively outside. A hoarse and ancient voice sounded from within the coffin. There was a hint of anger in his voice. Even the purple flame demoness and the others who cultivated in the fire domain all year round could not help but feel annoyed. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been burned from the inside out. Bang! With a dull thud, the lid of the coffin was completely opened, revealing a person covered in fiery red crystals. That's right, crystals. Every part of her body was covered in sacred flame gold. Who would have thought that the famous divine flame demoness true form was the sacred flame gold that could help a sect master make a breakthrough? The purple flame demoness reporting to the demoness, a peerless expert of unknown cultivation level has arrived in our Starfire civilization. The last time she saw the divine flame demoness was hundreds of millions of years ago. After so many years, she still looked the same, but the aura she exuded was far stronger than before. In the past, the divine flame demoness could only be considered a super expert. However, She had now firmly surpassed the super experts and reached an extremely powerful realm. She believed that her true strength was comparable to the old monsters of a mystic Tao palace. Peerless Grandmaster, the divine flame demoness, closed her eyes as if she was sensing something. She said, "No, but there's a stranger with a mixed aura in my sacred palace." The purple flame demoness and the others also sensed that the oppressive aura had dissipated not long ago. "Maybe that senior has retracted his aura," the purple flame demoness said. The divine flame demoness said disapprovingly, "Could you have been fooled?" Fooled? Recalling the scene when Suyu appeared in the sky above the Starfire civilization, the three demonic women shook their heads at the same time. They were very sure that he was powerful. "Tell us the details." The divine flame demoness squinted her crystal eyes slowly. Therefore, the three demonic women told her about the strange phenomenon and the endless pressure caused by Suyu's sudden arrival. After listening for a long time, the divine flame demoness said slowly, "If that's the case, you only sensed that he was powerful. You didn't see him fight?" "Yes," the purple flame demoness said. "However, with that kind of pressure, even if he didn't fight, it was obvious that his realm was terrifying." The divine flame demoness shook her head. Her eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. "What you saw might not be true. Besides, you haven't seen much of it. Now the pressure on his body is gone, isn't it?" The three demonic women couldn't believe that Suyu was a peerless expert in disguise. Even if the pressure on his body was disguised, it couldn't be justified that he pretended to be a strong expert and came to the Starfire civilization to cheat them. Who would have the guts to do that? "Let's go and meet him." The divine flame demoness left the coffin. Although her body was burning with flames, she gave off a chilly aura. They came out of the Saint Palace. Through the gate of the Saint Palace, they could already sense Suyu's aura. A human with a faint aura of the dragon tribe. The purple flame demoness was shocked when she sensed it immediately. The other two demonic women were also suspicious. Could it be that the divine flame demoness was right? Could it be that Suyu is a fake almighty? The divine flame demoness' eyes were filled with cold, murderous intent. Someone had come to the Starfire civilization to swindle people while she was in seclusion. It seemed that she had been in seclusion for too long. Some people had forgotten about her existence. "Your Excellency, I am the divine flame demoness. Please come out and meet me." The divine flame demoness maintained basic politeness. However, the house was silent. There was no response. After a while, the divine flame demoness repeated her words. However, there was still no response. This time, the purple flame demoness and the other two demonic women were completely shaken. If this person was really almighty, why didn't he say anything? He must have a guilty conscience and didn't dare to come out. At the thought of this, the purple flame demoness was furious. She recalled how she had treated this person as a powerful senior. She had kowtowed to him and offered him the most precious holy flame gold of the Starfire civilization. She was so furious that her chest almost exploded. The other two demonic women were equally agitated. The divine flame demoness' face turned cold. She stepped forward and said coldly, "Since you have the guts to come, I guess you were mentally prepared." Intense, murderous intent gushed out of her body. Right at this moment, an unprecedentedly powerful pressure suddenly erupted from the Saint Palace. Under such pressure, the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth danced wildly. The clouds in the sky changed drastically, and the entire Saint Palace began to shake violently. Boom! With a deafening explosion, a gigantic virtual shadow of a finger darted out of the Saint Palace and crushed the entire Saint Palace on the spot. The virtual shadow of the finger did not lose its momentum. It shot out into the sky. Wherever it passed, the atmosphere of the heavens and the earth trembled violently. It also shattered the space layer by layer, leaving behind a pitch-black void. The virtual shadow disappeared into the distant universe and crushed many abandoned stars near the Starfire civilization. Standing on the Starfire civilization, one could see the stars explode one after another. The divine flame demoness, who had taken a step forward, stopped halfway in the air and did not take another step forward. Her face was filled with shock. Ancestral-level strength. Walala. The sky full of ruins fell from the sky and crashed back into the same palace. At the end of the ruins, a person covered in thunder and lightning sat on the main seat. He looked down at the four of them condescendingly. "What are you arguing about? I will kill you with one finger." The purple flame demoness' anger was like a dog that had seen a lion. She instantly shrank back, and fear reappeared on her face. The other two demonic women were also trembling in fear. How could this be a fake almighty? Who will be able to fake that finger? Even the divine flame demoness was shaken. Could her suspicions have been wrong? She fixed her gaze on Suyu. When she noticed the thunder and lightning on the surface of his body, her pupils constricted again. Yuan-level realm. Although the thunderbolts were not from the Yuan-level realm, they came from the Yuan-level realm. With her superior cultivation, she could recognize them at a glance. She no longer had any doubts in her heart. The coldness on her face was replaced by respect. She put her hands together in front of her chest. "I'm the divine flame demoness. Please forgive me for disturbing you." Suyu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. That was close. He had been suppressing the insect ancestor's finger. Finally, when the four demonic women were about to break through the door, he succeeded. He sacrificed a drop of the insect ancestor's pure blood, held the finger in his hand, and poked it outwards. Even if it was just a finger of the insect ancestor, even if it was a casual poke, the power that would be produced would also be on a world-destroying level. As a result, the famous divine flaming demoness was successfully intimidated as well. Only then did the crisis slightly ease. However, Suyu understood that he could not show any kind expression at this moment. Otherwise, he would easily be seen as guilty, and then he would be suspected and exposed. "I said I wanted a rest. Who gave you the guts to disturb me?" Suyu is unforgiving. The purple flame demoness groaned inwardly. She secretly glanced at the divine flame demoness and thought to herself, "The three of us already said it was the divine flame demoness who did not believe us." Now, the divine flame demoness was completely annoyed. That finger, just now, was a sign of great dissatisfaction with them, wasn't it? The divine flame demoness nodded and said with a smile, "Elder, please calm down. It was my fault. I will try my best to make it up to you." Before Suyu could continue to get angry, she took out an iron rod the size of a rolling pin. "This is the heaven-destroying rod that I obtained many years ago. I can change its size and weight at will. I hope you will like it," the divine flame demoness said. Chapter 2354. Suyu did not take it. He first observed the color of the object from Xiao Dai's perspective. At first glance, it was dark blue in color with a faint purple glow. Blue represented the level of a Dao artifact. However, this item was about to surpass the level of a Dao artifact and reach a higher level of Dharma treasure. In Suyu's hands, apart from the divine nine-dragon cauldron, only the royal authority dragon sword had managed to reach a dark blue color. The Heaven Destroyer staff in front of him was actually a higher level of dark blue. His heart thumped madly, yet his expression remained unchanged as he said indifferently, "It's just a magic treasure that's about to transcend Dao artifact. What's so special about it?" Upon hearing this, the divine flame demonic woman looked at Suyu in awe. The heaven exterminating rod was very strange. There were no fluctuations on its surface. When she first obtained it, she thought it was an ordinary rod. After several years of research, he finally figured out its level. However, Suyu was able to see through it with just a glance. An expert was indeed an expert. She was completely convinced and had no more doubts. "Senior, please accept my apologies." The divine flame demonic woman felt her heart ache a little. She only had 2 such high-grade magic treasures, so how could she not feel heartache after giving one away? However, if he angered this person, he would have to cut his own flesh in exchange for forgiveness. However, she was proficient in the fire element, so this rod was not very useful to her. When he thought of this, he felt much better. Suyu took the rod unwillingly and warned, "Don't do it again." "Who?" The group heaved a long sigh of relief. They had finally survived this calamity. "Senior, Why don't I accompany you on a tour of the Starfire civilization? The divine flame demonic woman tried to establish a good relationship with him. Suyu didn't refuse. He also wanted to see the glory of the Starfire civilization. Lead the way. Therefore, the four demonic women accompanied Suyu as he wandered around the Starfire civilization respectfully. In order to serve Suyu well, the four demonic women did their best. They took out all the precious spiritual fruits, spiritual liquids, and other good things in the Starfire civilization to entertain him. They were afraid that Senior Suyu would be displeased. Along the way, people from the Sacred Palace had arranged for them to be prepared in advance. Billions of living beings lined the streets to welcome them. It was a grand scene. Suyu chatted with them again and again, but every time he talked about something related to the last era. In fact, they were all part of the demonic human's memories. However, his words were deafening in the ears of the four fiendish women, especially the divine flame fiendish woman. She didn't know much about the previous era, so she knew that what Suyu said was not recorded in historical records. Only those who had experienced the previous era could know about it. Her heart was filled with deep veneration. The powerful senior in front of him might be a super almighty who had survived from the previous era. Suyu, on the other hand, tried to find out more about the outside world from the divine flame demonic woman. Her cultivation was extremely profound, and her knowledge was exceptionally broad. She knew far more than Xiao Lifeng, Radiant Jade, and the others. From her, Suyu learned what kind of existence the mysterious Dao Palace was. According to her, those who were qualified to join the Xiandao Palace were at least Xiandao Lord. As one of the top 3 of the 7-star civilizations, she did not even have the right to join the Xiandao Palace. At the same time, he finally understood the specific division of the Dao Lord realm. The Dao Lords of the heavens and the earth were divided into the heaven, earth, profound, and yellow realms. So far, almost all of the Path Masters that Suyu had come into contact with belonged to the lowest level, the Yellow Path Master. The Yellow Dao Master was further divided into 5 major levels, from the lowest to the highest. They were the Beginner Dao Realm, the Forgotten Words Realm, the Fish Dragon Realm, the Celestial Being Realm, and the Great Sovereign Realm. The Beginner Path Realm was what Suyu thought of as an ordinary Path Master realm. The Speechless Realm was equivalent to a Dao Lord of the Patriarch level. The Fish Dragon Realm was equivalent to a Dao Lord at Xia Ian's level. In the Celestial Being Realm, there were super experts like Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade. As for the Grand Monarch Realm, it was just like the Divine Flame Demoness before him. She stood in the Yellow Dao Master Realm and looked down on the world. He had probed. Above the Master of the Heavenly Law was the Son of Heaven of the Sacred Mountain, who ruled over countless eras. In the past, Yun Yazi and the Sinful Girl were both Masters of the Heavenly Law and members of the Heavenly Law Palace. They were almighty figures of the present age, second only to the Sacred Mountain. Suyu looked up at Songming and murmured inwardly, "After experiencing 100 lifetimes, I've finally reached the realm of the Path Master. I'm not far from you now." Suyu's desire to break through to the Path Master level grew more and more urgent. He could foresee that if his 8 great rules transformed into the domain and broke through to become a Path Master, his cultivation would definitely not be at the Beginner Path realm. If he wanted to become a Path Master, now that his soul and body had been transformed, and he had completed the domain realm of the Law of Space, he could already be called the Beginner Path realm. When the other 7 great rules reached the domain realm, would he still be at the Beginner Path realm? Definitely not. Right at that moment, the jade pendant on the waist of the purple flame Demoness lit up. She put it to her ear and listened. Overjoyed, she said, "Senior, there's news about the great divine Lord of heaven and earth." "Where?" Suyu's body flickered with lightning arcs. The purple flame Demoness said, "Senior, please follow me and ask the person who knows about it." "The person who knows about it?" Suyu's eyes flickered slightly. He was in the Starfire civilization. How could he ignore the existence of a person? Under the guidance of the 4 demonesses, Suyu came to a remote villa in Sacred Flame City. Rather than calling it a villa, it was more like a cage. There were seals all around the villa, and there were even fish dragon realm pathmasters secretly guarding it, preventing the people inside from escaping or being kidnapped. In the villa, a man was crafting talismans under the watch of several pathmasters of the Forgetting Realm. His body was ragged, and his hands and feet were shackled to restrict the flow of the desolate force. There were several ghastly, bloody grooves on his back. Due to the lack of desolate force, they hadn't healed for a long time. Some of his injuries were gradually worsening, causing his flesh to stink and rot. Suyu sighed secretly. Zhan Wushuang, the disciple of the Jiuzhou king, the heaven ruler who looked down on his peers in Jiuzhou, was in such dire straits. Was he really the so-called destined emperor? Senior, that person is the person who knows about it, the purple flame demoness said. Suyu recognized him at a glance. It was Zhan Wushuang. He pretended not to know and said, "Oh, why is he imprisoned as a laborer?" The purple flame demoness said, "This person has the fate of an emperor. If he has the slightest opportunity, he can transform into a dragon. We may not be able to subdue him, so we can't use our full strength to oppress him." Suyu nodded calmly. "Bring him here." The purple flame demoness personally entered the courtyard and brought Zhan Wushuang with her. She warned him sternly, "Answer whatever that senior asks you, and watch your mouth. Don't speak carelessly." Zhan Wushuang raised his tired and dry eyes and looked at the person who was covered in lightning and whose face couldn't be seen clearly. He was very curious. What kind of existence was this person whom the purple flame demoness called a senior? Could he be at the same level as the divine flame demoness? However, he discovered that a woman covered in crystals was following behind the lightning person. It was the rumored divine flame demoness. Judging from the way they stood, the divine flame demoness seemed to regard lightning as her superior. Zhan Wushuang was shocked. Who is this person? How dare you look around? Do you want to Zi Xian or not? The purple flame demoness threatened him in a low voice. Zhan Wushuang immediately lowered his head, his eyes dimming. Zhan Wushuang quietly walked up to Suyu and knelt on one knee. "Senior, this is the person who knows about it," the purple flame demoness said. "Senior, you can ask him if you have any questions." Suyu nodded slightly. He raised his hand and scattered some life force to heal Zhan Wushuang's injuries. Zhan Wushuang was slightly stunned. He looked at Suyu in confusion. Even the four demonic women were shocked. Is this senior really such a kind person? Where is the divine throne of heaven and earth? Suyu asked calmly. Zhan Wushuang did not resist. He said, "In the east region." All of a sudden, the expressions of the four demonic women changed slightly, especially the divine flame demoness. The others had only heard of the legends of the east region, but she had personally experienced it. It was a land of evil. She had once ventured deep into it in search of a certain material. Unfortunately, she had been haunted by the evil energy. After 300 million years, the evil energy had finally faded away. Although her cultivation had increased greatly, it still left an indelible psychological shadow on the East Domain. What a coincidence! It just so happened that the 8-star civilization's recruitment site was in the East region. The divine throne of heaven and earth was also hidden there. "Understand," Suyu said calmly. He did not ask any more questions. The purple flame demoness asked tentatively, "Senior, don't you want to verify it?" What he said might not be the truth. She was worried that Zhan Wushuang would lie to Senior and anger him. He might vent his anger on the Starfire civilization. "There is no need," Suyu added. "From today onwards, he will stay by my side." Did Zhan Wushuang lie to him? Of course he did. The Emperor's 4-piece set would approach Zhan Wushuang on its own. Why would it do the opposite and hide in the West region? Therefore, Zhan Wushuang must be lying. The real divine throne of heaven and earth might have only appeared in the East region to attract the attention of the world. Then, he quietly came to the West region to meet up with Zhan Wushuang. Therefore, Suyu felt that there was no need to ask further. Since he was lying, he must have prepared an excuse to cover up his lie. As long as he kept Zhan Wushuang by his side, the divine throne of heaven and earth would come to him sooner or later. "Zhan Wushuang, is your blessing that Senior has taken a fancy to you?" Hurry up and thank him. The purple flame demoness scolded. Zhang Wushuang's face was full of gratitude, but his heart was unusually heavy. Man proposes, God disposes. His original intention was to lead all the people of the Starfire civilization to the East region, and he would wait for the divine throne of heaven and earth to sneak back to meet up with him in the West region. Who would have thought that an unknown expert would appear midway and ask him to tag along, causing all of his wishful thinking to go to waste? Thank you for your kindness, Senior. Zhang Wushuang appeared submissive. Yes. So you thought about it for a moment, then said, since you're still somewhat useful, I'll promise you one thing. Tell me, I can do it for you. The purple flame demoness and the others immediately became restless. Was Zhang Wushuang going to use this against them? However, Zhang Wushuang didn't do that. Instead, he kowtowed repeatedly in excitement and said, thank you for your great kindness. This junior has no other request. I only hope that Senior can save this junior's friend. Oh, who? Her name is Zi Xian, a good friend of mine. Right now, she is trapped in the dungeon of the Starfire civilization. Please take her with you, Senior. Zi Xian? When he first saw Zhang Wushuang being threatened by the purple flame demoness, he had a feeling that Zi Xian might be in the hands of the Starfire civilization. It turned out to be true. Bring him here, Su Yu ordered. The purple flame demoness face stiffened, but she didn't dare to disobey. She immediately crushed a jade talisman and gave an order to one of the guards. Not long after, a girl dressed in purple with a gloomy and haggard expression was brought over. Su Yu recognized her at a glance. She was Zi Xuan, whom he had not seen for a long time. When he recalled the first time they met, he couldn't help but sigh. From now on, you will stay by my side, Su Yu said calmly. Zhang Wushuang was overjoyed. He was sincerely grateful to this senior who had suddenly appeared. Although Su Yu had dispelled his plan to seize the heavenly divine throne, he had indirectly saved Zi Xian. Senior brother Wushuang. When Zi Xuan saw Zhang Wushuang, tears welled up in her eyes, and she threw herself into his arms. Zhang Wushuang was overwhelmed by the favor. Staring at the person in front of him who had become much thinner, he felt extremely distressed. Choking with sobs, he said, "It's my incompetence that has caused you to suffer." The two of them embraced each other in public. The relationship between them was sincere and deep, so you didn't disturb them. He sat alone at the stone table and drank silently. 100 years had passed. The relationship between the two of them was still the same as before, and they could often be together. But what about him? He was alone, walking alone between heaven and earth. A trace of envy welled up in his heart. By the way, Zi Xian, come and thank this senior. Zhang Wushuang pulled Zi Xian to kneel and kowtow. Zi Xian didn't understand the situation, so she kowtowed a few times like a chick pecking rice. You could dispense with the formalities. Just stay by my side from now on, Su Yu said. Zi Xian couldn't help but size him up. She said obediently, "Yes, senior." The four demonic women around him were surprised. Why is the senior only nice to the two of them? The purple flame demonic woman looked at Zi Xian, who was purple in color, and thought to herself, does the senior have a taste for such things? As she thought about this, her heart shook, and she secretly activated the jade charm. Having indirectly saved Zhang Wushuang and Zi Xian, Su Yu felt that it was time to leave. However, just as he was about to leave, he saw from afar an elegant and pure young girl in a long black gown. She was walking gracefully toward him. Seeing her, Su Yu couldn't help but smile. He had almost forgotten about her. "Greetings, demonic woman." The pure young girl obediently bowed to the purple flame demonic woman. The purple flame demonic woman was all smiles, and she introduced the young girl to Su Yu. "Senior, this is my friend. She will serve you from now on." The pure young girl was taken aback, and she couldn't help but look at Su Yu. Su Yu was secretly amused. This woman was none other than the golden-eyed playboy's pawn in the past, the Star Lady. She was originally a spy in the Pirate Alliance, and she was also supervising Su Yu. Unexpectedly, she had been captured by the purple flame demonic woman. The Star Lady understood tacitly, and she knew that the purple flame demonic woman wanted her to use her beauty to curry favor with this unknown senior. She was extremely aggrieved and resentful, but she had no choice but to agree. With a smile that was both angry and happy, she said, "Greetings, senior." Suyu didn't have a good impression of this woman, so he asked calmly, "Are you willing to serve me?" The Star Lady said with a smile, "It would be my honor. You probably aren't qualified to serve me, but seeing that you are sincere, I will reluctantly give you a chance," Suyu said calmly. "Zi Xian, she will be your female servant from now on. You can order her around at will." Zi Xian pointed at herself, and she couldn't believe it. How could she not know who the Star Lady was? She was the purple flame demonic woman's exclusive property, and she was the purple flame demonic woman's most beloved woman. In the Starfire civilization, not only did she have a high status, but her abilities had also reached the state of forgetting words. Compared to her, Zi Xian was just an ordinary half-step pathmaster. Zi Xian didn't have the guts to ask the Star Lady to serve her. Chapter 2355. She didn't have the guts, and neither did the Star Lady. Asking her to serve as a prisoner? What was this senior thinking? She turned to look at the purple flame demonic woman with an aggrieved look, asking for her help. However, what made her even more aggrieved was that the purple flame demonic woman had no intention of pleading for her. Instead, she glared at her fiercely, threatening her. The Star Lady felt a chill run down her spine. The purple flame demonic woman had taken everything from her, but in the end, she had thrown her away like a rag. Despite her resentment, she lowered her head tactfully. She came before Zi Xuan and bowed. "Master, what can I do for you?" Zi Xuan clutched her chest, not daring to say a word. To her, the Star Lady was a great figure whom she didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Suyu said calmly, "As a servant, do I need instructions from others?" She glanced at Zi Xuan's wrinkled and yellow complexion and dirty clothes from being trapped for a long period of time, and she said, "Bring your mistress to bathe and change her clothes. While you're at it, pay attention to what you're wearing." The Star Lady was dressed much prettier than Zi Xuan. When the two of them stood together, Zi Xuan looked like a servant. "Yes, senior." The Star Lady bit her lips. She had a vague feeling that this senior was targeting her. Had she unintentionally offended him? However, she hadn't done anything out of line since she had arrived. Confused, the Star Lady bowed and led Zi Xuan to wash up and dress up. Zhan Wushuang saw this and was suddenly enlightened. He no longer had any ill feelings towards Suyu like he did when they first met. Instead, he was grateful. The divine flame demonic woman said with a smile, "Senior, why don't you come with us to the East region? To be honest, we are also preparing to go to the East region to send our disciples to participate in the 8-star civilization recruitment meet." The East region was a perilous environment. The divine flame demonic woman wanted to bring Suyu along. With such an unparalleled almighty, they would surely be able to resolve the crisis easily. Suyu wanted to refuse, but after careful consideration, he realized that the East region was a dangerous place. The divine flame demonic woman, who was a pathmaster of the great venerable realm, was still needed. He pretended to ponder for a moment, then said helplessly, "Fine. Since you are so filial, I don't mind taking you with me." The divine flame demonic woman heaved a sigh of relief. Wasn't that what she had hoped for? The other 3 evil women were overjoyed. The purple flame demoness said excitedly, "Hee, let's see if the South Pole immortal old man still dares to be so arrogant when we meet in the Western regions." Among the 9 grade 7 civilizations in the Western region, the Starfire civilization could only be ranked second. The most powerful one was the Antarctic civilization. It was said that the South Pole immortal Wang was an ancient being whose lifespan exceeded that of the divine flame demonic woman. He had been coveting the divine flame demonic woman for a long time. He wanted to take the sacred flame goal from her and use it to break through his current Grand Monarch level and reach Sect Master Xiandao's level. In the past, he had attempted to invade the Starfire civilization many times, but the divine flame demonic woman had been able to repel him with the advantage of the Starfire civilization's terrain. Now, he dared to try it again? Did he really think that the senior in front of him was a vegetarian? If they knew that Suyu was actually a half-stepped Lord, what would they think? However, I'm going to pass by the colored glaze civilization. There are some trivial matters that I need to deal with. Suyu's eyes shone with a cold light. He still had a contract with the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion in his hand. He had to take it. Moreover, he felt that it was time to settle the matter regarding the golden-eyed Lang Jun. I'll follow your instructions, Senior. The divine flame, demonic woman, naturally had no objections. Before long, Zixin returned. Her cheeks were rosy and tender, and her long black hair was beautiful. She was wearing a white goose-yellow dress, which was bright and beautiful. She looked like an extraordinary fairy. Zhang Wushuang was infatuated with her, and he tried hard to conceal his admiration for her. Suyu nodded lightly. That was how he remembered Zixin to be. All right, let's go, Suyu said. The divine flame, demonic woman, came before him and opened a space storage device that was burning with flames. 7 to 8 fire beasts dashed out of it. Senior, these are the heavenly fire-flying beasts that I've been nurturing. They can travel trillions of galaxies in an instant. We should be able to reach the colored glaze civilization in 10 days, the divine flame, demonic woman introduced. The purple flame, demonic woman, and the others were extremely envious. The heavenly fire-flying beasts were nurtured by the divine flame, demonic woman, with her own sacred flame gold. They were unique in the world. In terms of speed, no one in the entire West regions could compare to them. The purpose of taking out this item was both to show her hospitality and to show off the Starfire civilization's power to this senior. However, to everyone's surprise, she did not receive a compliment from the senior. Instead, she sneered coldly. Don't take out such an embarrassing thing. The divine flame, demonic woman stiffened on the spot, and a hint of dissatisfaction welled up in her heart. The heavenly fire-flying beasts were something that she was extremely proud of. She could not believe that the divine flame demonic woman would say that it was embarrassing. Although the senior was an expert, he could not deliberately belittle himself like that, could he? However, Suyu continued, do I need to rely on such lowly ants to come and go as I please? Fine, it's good to broaden your horizons. Otherwise, you'll be like frogs at the bottom of a well. The divine flame demonic woman was skeptical. She believed that the divine flame demonic woman had a flying object that surpassed the heavenly fire-flying beasts. How much faster could it be? At most, it could only be 1 or 2 times faster. Anyway, she had never heard of any almighty who possessed a treasure that was several times faster than the heavenly fire-flying beasts. Stand properly, Suyu said calmly. The divine flame demonic woman retrieved the heavenly fire-flying beasts. She stood together with the other 3 demonic women, Zhang Wushuang, Zixuan, and the Star Lady. Crash! Suyu clenched his fist, and a pair of emerald wings appeared in his palm. At the same time, he secretly injected a drop of the insect ancestors' blood into them. All of a sudden, the wings grew to 30 feet in length and flapped violently. The yin and yang of heaven and earth, life and death in the human world, space, and even time were all thrown into disorder. The divine flame demonic woman did not see anything clearly. She felt as if the world was falling apart, and she was being torn apart by the chaos. Fortunately, the entire process only lasted for a breath's time. The horrifying visions quickly receded. She only saw the emerald light in Suyu's palm weaken rapidly, and everything calmed down. She was extremely shocked. She asked, Senior, may I ask if this is the preparation for flying? If it was a flying treasure, why didn't the senior continue? Why did he stop? Suyu shook his head and sighed softly. Rotten wood cannot be carved. Open your eyes and look around you. Where are you? The divine flame demonic woman glanced sideways, and her pupils shrank. Even with her billions of years of self-control, she could not help but exclaim in shock. This is the colored glaze civilization? There was no mistaking it. It was a civilization that was covered in cold air all year round. The purple flame demonic woman sucked in a breath of cold air. Her eyes were as wide as they could be. She wondered if she was dreaming. One breath. In just one breath, they had traveled from the Starfire civilization which was several years away, to the colored glaze civilization. Zhan Wushuang and Zi Xuan were equally shocked. The Star Lady's scalp went numb. Her gaze toward the thunder and lightning man was replaced by fear from the depths of her soul. She had never understood why the divine flame demonic woman had addressed him as senior. Now, she finally understood. It was because the thunder and lightning man was a great emperor-level being who surpassed the west regions. No, the entire outer regions. With a wave of his hand, he had led everyone across the 3-year journey of the Pathmaster of the Fish Dragon realm. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, she would not have believed it. The divine flame demonic woman's heart thumped wildly. She was extremely shocked. This was the ability of an unparalleled, almighty being. As she recalled how she had taken out the heavenly fire-flying beast, which she was so proud of, to show off in front of the senior, she could not help but feel extremely embarrassed. No wonder the senior had said that it was an inferior flying tool. The funny thing was that she had not been convinced at first. Now, in comparison, she realized that in the senior's eyes, it was more than inferior. It was practically worthless. All of you, there's always someone better than you out there. There will always be things in this world that you cannot imagine. Therefore, you must remember to be humble and look at everything in this universe. Suyu shook his head as he gave them pointers. This was a very simple principle, and everyone understood it. However, when it came from the senior's mouth, the 4 demonic women felt as if it was the great way. They all felt enlightened. The divine flame demonic woman's face was filled with respect and sincere gratitude. Senior, your words have enlightened us. The purple flame demonic woman and the other 2 were extremely sincere. We will remember your teachings. Although Zhan Wushuang and Zi Xuan did not speak, their respect for Suyu had already reached its peak. The Star Lady's eyes were flickering, and no one knew what she was thinking. Follow me to the colored glaze civilization. Suyu paused for a moment, then said, However, I do not wish to be too ostentatious. The divine flame, demonic woman, hurriedly took over the conversation. If it is a trivial matter, how could you trouble yourself with it? Just leave it to us. All right. Suyu took a step forward. He did not use the miraculous space traversal technique just now. Instead, he was flying normally. The divine flame demonic woman was puzzled. However, when she thought about what the senior had said just now, that he did not wish to be too ostentatious, she gradually understood. Under Suyu's lead, the group descended in the sky above the territory of the sword-seeking pavilion of the colored glaze civilization. At this moment, inside the sword-seeking pavilion, Ghost Teacher, who had yet to recover from his injuries, was in the great hall of the sword-seeking pavilion, summoning the disciples of the sword-seeking pavilion. Compared to the high-spirited glaze ancient cave, the current sword-seeking pavilion was obviously much more dejected. Only Hunting Shadow and Ghost I remained in the 9 Swords Pavilion of the Sword-Seeking Pavilion. The rest of the geniuses had all perished in the glaze ancient cave. The most infuriating thing was that Hunting Shadow and Ghost I had not made any progress. Instead, Xin Hua, Xin Yin, and Kong Chu from the Palace of Light had all advanced to the Fish Dragon realm. Xie Xiaoya from a Nightless Empire had also advanced to the Fish Dragon realm. Hunting Shadow, who used to be the number 1 of the younger generation of the Colored Glaze civilization, was still stuck in the Forgetting Words realm. He had been left far behind. The entire sword-seeking pavilion did not have high hopes for the 8-star civilization recruitment test this time. Don't be dejected, everyone. The ghost energy on the surface of Ghost Teacher's body was weak, and even his voice was weak. The foundation of the sword-seeking pavilion overshadows that of the Palace of Light and the Nightless Empire. How can we be surpassed so easily? Don't worry, those 2 parties will come to beg the sword-seeking pavilion for help very soon. From the disciples to the elders of the faction, everyone was shocked and bewildered. How could Ghost Teacher still be so confident when he had fallen into such a state? Pavilion Master, can you let us know a thing or two? The great elder could not help but ask. Ghost Teacher stroked his beard and laughed. The secrets of heaven cannot be revealed. Anyway, All you need to know is that in 10 days, the sword-seeking pavilion will lead the colored glaze civilization. Ghost Teacher was unusually confident. What? Chapter 23:56. What did the pavilion master get to be so confident? For hundreds of millions of years, the Lazuli civilization had always been in a tripartite state. Because the foundations of the three parties were similar, they had always maintained a delicate balance. Each party wanted to occupy the entire Lazuli civilization alone, but they had never succeeded. It was easy to imagine how shocking Ghost Master's words were. However, seeing how confident he was, the people of the sword-seeking pavilion were inexplicably excited and expectant. Congratulations, Pavilion Master. The sword-seeking pavilion has unified the civilization for thousands of years. Pavilion Master is wise. We swear to follow the Pavilion Master to death and never betray you. The compliments reached the 9 heavens. However, at this moment, a discordant voice drifted down from the sky. I have received everyone's kind intentions. The voice was ethereal and grand. It was filled with infinite space power, fluctuating from east to west, strong and weak at times. It was extremely mysterious. Everyone in the palace left the main hall in bewilderment and went to the square to search for the source of the voice. However, the scene in front of them made them tremble with fear. Unknowingly, the sky for millions of miles had been replaced by a steaming flame. The sky and earth were dyed blood red. The terrifying temperature caused the lake water to boil, and countless spirit beasts in the water jumped out of the water. The spirit veins connecting the sky and the earth were ignited. The low-level disciples in seclusion were interrupted by the sudden high temperature and ran out drenched in sweat. The entire sword-seeking pavilion was instantly plunged into a sea of flames. Ghost Master's expression was cold and solemn. He slammed the table and rushed out of the main hall, standing proudly in the sky. Who is it? Why are you sneaking around? Come out. He quickly scanned the surroundings, but did not find anyone suspicious. I'm standing right in front of you. What do you mean by sneaking around? Suddenly, a voice floated from behind. Ghost Master's heart skipped a beat. He had actually appeared behind him without a sound. He turned his head and saw a person surrounded by lightning standing behind him with his hands behind his back. There were also several people standing behind him. He did not know a few of the young people. However, how could he not know the 4 women surrounded by flames? The 4 great demonesses of the Starfire civilization? Ghost Master almost bit his tongue off. The Starfire civilization was several years away from the Lazuli civilization. Why did they suddenly come without any warning? This was especially true for the evil woman in the middle. Her entire body was made of crystals. Her legend had always resounded in the western region. When she became famous, Ghost Master was still the young master of sword-seeking pavilion. Ghost Master's heart was pounding when he saw the 4 of them. He pretended to be calm and scolded. Evil women, what is the meaning of you trespassing on my Lazuli civilization? The 4 demonic women did not say a word. They only looked at Suyu's back, implying that they would follow his lead. The Ghost Master could tell from their postures that their statuses were high and low, and he was shocked. Even the divine flame demoness had to bow her head to him. Who is this lightning man? Was he also the one who said that? You are. Ghost Master probed. Suyu casually took out a contract and threw it at him. Ghost Teacher was puzzled. When he took a look, his pupils shrank. He was shocked and suspicious. You are Suyu? Suyu? The 4 evil women were not too surprised. Perhaps this was the senior's real name. But Zhang Wushuang and Zi Xian were stunned at the same time, and they looked at each other at the same time. Perhaps there were not many people named Suyu in the world, but they all remembered Suyu. Suyu is my beloved disciple, Suyu said calmly. Suyu has a master? Ghost Master's heart skipped a beat, and his face darkened immediately. No wonder that Brat was so powerful and did not take sword-seeking pavilion seriously. It turned out that he had an expert behind him. Then, you have come to ask me to exchange for this contract? Ghost Master clenched his teeth tightly, extremely unwilling. What do you think? Suyu asked calmly. Ghost Master was about to unify the whole Lazuli civilization. How could he be willing to hand over sword-seeking pavilion at such a critical juncture? He had an idea and said, "Your Excellency, this is the agreement between me and your disciple. If you want to complete the contract, please let him come in person." Suyu had expected Ghost Master to go back on his word. He had been prepared. "You have misunderstood. I am not here to listen to your opinion. I am here to order you," Suyu said calmly. "I will give you 3 breaths time to leave sword-seeking pavilion." 3, 2. Ghost Master was slightly fearful, but he thought to himself that he was relying on sword-seeking pavilion. How could he be afraid of this person? 1. After 3 breaths had passed, Suyu slowly closed his eyes. He had no intention of attacking. When Ghost Master saw this, he thought to himself, "It seems like the other party is just threatening me verbally." To everyone's surprise, the divine flame demonic woman came to her senses. She took a step forward and said, "Ghost Master, since we're both from the western regions, why don't you leave now? If you do, I might spare your life." Ghost Master spoke in a solemn voice. "Divine flame demonic woman, you're the leader of the Starfire civilization, yet you're willing to be someone else's dog. Don't you feel ashamed?" He really didn't understand why a powerful being like the divine flame demonic woman would submit to a man of lightning. The divine flame demonic woman shook her head. "Sigh, you're just a frog in a well. You know nothing about your senior's power. If senior doesn't want to deal with an ant like you, then allow me to do it for her." The divine flame demonic woman stepped forward as a peerless aura burst forth from her body. Ghost Master was caught off guard. His legs went soft, and he almost knelt on the ground. He cried out involuntarily, "Grandmaster Realm." Among the Yellow Taoist masters, this was the highest level. She was only 1 step away from Master Xiandao. "Fire, extinguish," the divine flame demonic woman murmured. Ghost Master suddenly let out a horrible shriek. He was instantly burned into a pile of ashes from the inside out. The entire place fell into a dead silence. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. The master of the sword-seeking pavilion, who was of the celestial realm, had been turned into ashes in a single move. What followed was a great panic from the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion. Under that terrifying pressure, they were terrified and uneasy. The purple flame demonic woman and the other 2 had long known her strength, so they were still calm. Zhan Wushuang, Zixuan, and the Star Lady felt their scalps go numb. This was the difference between the great venerable realm and the celestial realm. The difference between the 2 was like the difference between a martial artist and a mortal. The former could kill the latter with a single thought. The divine flame demonic woman looked at the sword-seeking pavilion calmly. She said calmly, "Those who surrender will not be killed." Whoosh! Who dared not surrender? Who dare not submit? From the disciples to the great elders, everyone knelt down in fear. They didn't even have the thought of escaping. Suyu smiled as he witnessed the scene. Sure enough, the benefits of bringing the divine flame demonic woman with him were endless. He had come alone to reclaim the sword-seeking pavilion. Disregarding how to chase away the ghost teacher, just subduing the stubborn members of the sword-seeking pavilion had taken a lot of effort. Now that the divine flame demonic woman had appeared, who would dare to defy him? After intimidating the sword-seeking pavilion, the divine flame demonic woman returned to Suyu's side. She said, "My insignificant cultivation has shown its effects." Suyu nodded indifferently. "My cultivation is a little lacking, but there is still room for improvement." The divine flame demonic woman was delighted. She said, "Thank you for your affirmation." After that, Suyu successfully entered the sword-seeking pavilion and sat on its throne. Looking down at the higher-ups of the sword-seeking pavilion, Suyu was unperturbed. He had taken over the sword-seeking pavilion to secure a territory for the cauldron he had created. However, there were some people in the sword-seeking pavilion that needed to be cleaned up. "Where is Hunting Shadow?" Suyu said calmly, "I will not sit idly by when my beloved disciple is being bullied." Everyone looked at each other, indicating that they did not see Hunting Shadow. "Elder, Hunting Shadow has escaped." A creature with only one eye left emerged and said, "It was the ghost eye." Not only did it not escape, but it had stayed behind and exposed Hunting Shadow's whereabouts. Where did he escape to? So you asked again. The ghost, I said, the border of the palace of light. Lead the way and bring back his head. So you said, yes. The ghost eyes shone with excitement. He led the purple flame demonic woman in pursuit of Hunting Shadow. Hunting Shadow had fled for half a day, covering an immeasurable distance. Theoretically speaking, it was impossible to catch him. However, for some unknown reason, the ghost I was able to pinpoint his whereabouts accurately. A day later, he found him in a valley. The purple flame demonic woman had personally attacked. No matter how talented Hunting Shadow was, he was no match for her. He was captured alive by the purple flame demonic woman in no time. Hunting Shadow was enraged. He stared at the ghost eye with hatred. It's you. Why did you betray me? The ghost huge eyes blinked, emitting a long-concealed hostility. What do you think? Aren't you the one who turned me into this inhuman state? Hearing this, Hunting Shadow fell silent. In the Sword Seeker Pavilion, the one who specialized in the soul was not Hunting Shadow, but Ghost Eye. He was the true genius of the soul. Unfortunately, the Sword Seeker Pavilion Master favored Hunting Shadow more, wanting to groom him to be the successor of the Sword Seeker Pavilion. However, the Ghost Eye had always suppressed Hunting Shadow, making it difficult for him to become the successor. Hence, during one of his missions, Ghost Eye had been ambushed by several mysterious people. His body had been destroyed, and his soul had been disguised. Only his eye was left. The Ghost Eye knew who had done it, but he did not dare reveal it. He did not dare seek revenge, so he could only endure it. The last time Hunting Shadow had clashed with Suyu, the Ghost Eye had not said anything despite knowing how powerful Suyu was. He had hoped to use Suyu to kill him. Unfortunately, he had not succeeded. Now that the Sword Seeker Pavilion had been destroyed, the Ghost Eye had finally gotten his wish. Lady Demonic Woman, please hand Hunting Shadow over to the Elder. The Ghost Eye cupped his fists. The purple flame demonic woman frowned. You don't intend to go back? You have done a great service by capturing this person. The Elder will reward you. The Ghost Eye waved his hand. I have gotten my revenge, and I want to live in seclusion. I will hand this credit over to you, Lady Demonic Woman. The purple flame demonic woman was tempted, so she did not try to persuade him to stay. She said, all right, you may go. Farewell. The Ghost Eye turned into a remnant shadow and flickered into the sky. However, at that moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly fell from the sky and struck Ghost Eye. He staggered and rolled on the ground. At the same time, an extremely powerful space zone descended upon the area. Even the divine flame demonic woman and the others were teleported there. Suyu stood with his hands clasped behind his back, calmly looking at the Ghost Eye. Trying to play tricks in front of me? Aunt, you think too highly of yourself. The purple flame demonic woman turned around in shock, not understanding what was going on. Even the divine flame demonic woman and the others did not understand what Suyu was doing. Didn't he say he was going to capture Hunting Shadow?